All right, everybody, welcome to episode 4 of Non Sequitur Nerds. As always, I am Tim, joined by Ian. Ian, how's it going tonight?
Hey Tim, I'm going pretty good over here. We've got a really interesting show for you tonight.
We do.
We've got a special guest with us today. It is actually my brother, Keenan. If you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Hello there, everybody. I am Keenan, the younger brother to Ian, and I am going to be joining here to add my own non sequiturs to your guys' podcast.
We always need more of those.
Yes, exactly. What were we talking about again? Anyway,
Squirrel.
for those of you joining us tonight, I wanted to let you know this is a very special episode. Not only do we have a guest with us, but this episode is also probably going to run on the little longer side because there's three of us and we will be talking a lot. And also, we are going to be covering a topic that all three of us are very passionate about and we love to death. What are we covering tonight?
We can talk about that on the air, or the other thing.
Well, don't worry, we'll edit that out in post. So
Wait, I'm supposed to edit this stuff?
Yes. So tonight we are going to be covering season 2 of The Mandalorian. So if you aren't aware, I'm going to make sure this is said really clear right now. This episode will be filled with spoilers as we go through and talk about the latest season of The Mandalorian, which just wrapped up a couple of weeks ago.
I mean, we should probably also preface it by saying if you haven't watched season 1, there will probably be spoilers for that. And if you haven't watched season 1, what are you doing?
Right.
We should also preface that if you haven't seen season 2, you need to either get on that or buy Disney Plus and power through it.
It is absolutely worth it.
Yes. So with that, folks, we will give you a few seconds to pause the podcast, shut off the podcast, whatever you may want to do to avoid having a spoiler-filled evening. For those of you that either don't care, like listening to the melodious tone of my voice, or just want to sit and listen to us bullshit for the next hour, then please hang on with us. For everyone else, we will catch you next time, or whenever you get around to finishing Mandalorian, do that now, and come and join us again.
Good night, everybody!
That's all, folks.
Alrighty, folks. For those of you that stuck with us, thank you for joining us tonight. We are going to be talking about The Mandalorian Season 2. The season just wrapped up a couple of weeks ago. Each season's about 8 episodes. So this season started off... it kind of felt like it started off a little slow, a bit of a build. The first episode, though, was a good way to get the season started and start setting the tone.
Yeah.
So Mando returns to Tatooine. We run into a Legends character, Cobb Vanth, who is...
actually, he's, I think, part of the new Disney canon, but he was a part of a series of books called the Aftermath series that came out shortly after The Force Awakens.
Which are very good books, actually.
My apologies. So we meet Cobb, who is also donning, Boba Fett's Mandalorian armor.
And can I just say, like, when you see him walk into that bar, just seeing that armor on somebody, and you're like, oh my god, it's him! And then he takes off his helmet at some other guy.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
you get that tinge of nostalgia, and then you realize
right.
he really does not fit well in that armor. Whoever, he lost a lot of weight over the past 5 years, apparently.
Well, I mean, he's been being digested. He's going to lose a little bit of weight.
True.
Yes. So we get to see Cobb. We get to see Boba Fett's armor, and we get to see a fan. I don't know if it's a fan favorite creature or a much talked about creature in the Star Wars universe, a crate dragon. Something we've really only seen in extended media, and the real one that I can think of off the top of my head is Knights of the Old Republic, the BioWare game from back in the early 2000s, where you have to fight a crate dragon to get crate dragon pearls. That's the first time that I've ever remember, and the only time I remember seeing a crate dragon in media.
Now, were they? It's been a while since I played KOTOR. Were they that big in the game, or were they considerably smaller?
They were considerably smaller. They were large, for sure. They were probably the size of what you would think of, like, I'm trying to think of a good reference point. Probably like the dragons in Harry Potter. They were like that size, like, kind of your standard European-style dragon. But they were, I don't also remember them being like the sandworms where they're living underground.
Beetlejuice.
Well, I mean, you think, that's for that kind of environment, a desert environment, that it kind of makes sense as a nice little I don't even want to say necessarily an homage to another sci-fi series, but still, I mean, not what I expected, but I was happy with it.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I would agree.
A good Dune reference, I think, is always welcome. Dune was highly influential to George Lucas anyway. His including of spice mines is a reference to the spice melange of that series. So I thought it was a nice little touch.
Oh, I was going with Tremors, but that works better.
Oh well, dude, Tremors. Let's not get on that non sequitur.
Oh yeah.
Also another sci-fi classic. Check it out on Netflix. So yeah, we get to see Mando go up against a crate dragon in order to try to win back Boba's armor. As a Mandalorian himself, he can lay claim to the armor. Cobb is not a Mandalorian.
Right.
So in exchange for this, in exchange for the armor, Mando agrees to help Cobb get rid of the crate dragon that has been terrorizing their town for God knows how long. Mos, what was the town? Mos Espa or something like that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that sounds right. One of the Mosses.
Right.
So they team up, and then there's also another unlikely pairing in this chapter, where they bring in and actually pair up with the Sand People, who are an oft maligned group, most notable for attacking Luke in A New Hope, and for also attacking and killing Shmi Skywalker, kidnapping and then ultimately causing the death of Shmi Skywalker in Attack of the Clones. Which
they just don't like the Skywalkers, do they?
Apparently not. But
granted, the Skywalkers don't like him back, especially since I'm sure in the comics Darth Vader becomes like this ghost, boogeyman thing to the Sand People, because whenever he goes to Tatooine, he slaughters a village just for the hell of it.
Now, wasn't there, I think this was in Legends, wasn't there like a tribe of the Sand People that actually revered him as a god of sorts? Or am I thinking of something else?
That sounds correct, but I don't know that for sure, but that does sound like something that would happen.
Right. I mean, it's Star Wars.
Right,
exactly. So we now get partnered with Sand People, and then they have a pretty epic battle with the crate dragon. So apparently, something that I didn't know, crate dragons have acidic spit. So that's interesting, and that's new.
That's a nice little flavor.
Right, and they're also quite intelligent. And I will say this, I love the callback to the death of Boba Fett when Mando takes the gaffy stick and hits Cobb's jetpack and sends him flying off away out of harm's way.
That was a nice touch.
It was a nice homage to that oft made fun of scene in Return of the Jedi. Big badass bounty hunter gets taken out by a blind guy with a stick.
It also makes you wonder why they haven't. That seems like a very serious design flaw. That a little tap on the back of it causes it to fly off.
It's not a bug, maybe it's a feature.
Maybe it's just got a goofy ignition switch on it. Something that they might have to. It just never got fixed, or never got noticed. I mean, I don't know how much Cobb's flying around in the desert, but
true.
I mean, maybe it's a feature that's intended to be there. Like if you're in a squad, if you're a bunch of Mandos, you're in a squad, and something's going to impact with one of your teammates, you can slap them on the jetpack real quick, get them out of the way, or so. I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching here, but I don't know. That is a good point,
I think you're kind of reaching around on that one. So. Great episode, a good introduction to the series. Then we move on to the next episode, Chapter 10, The Passenger.
Well, you're forgetting about the very end of that episode, though.
Oh, yeah. The very huge moment.
You see as Mando's on his speeder heading back to, his ship, I think it was. You see a figure kind of come up over a hill watching him, and he turns around, and... very noticeable actor. I think he played this guy named what was it, Jango Fett in every single clone in the prequel trilogy.
Yeah, Tamara Morrison,
Yep.
The New Zealander Maori actor, best known here in the States anyway for playing Jango Fett in the prequel trilogy. Does appear very briefly in the episode, looking a little haggard and disheveled, but yeah, it was a nice. It was a nice, oh my god moment.
But it was
which
still
Now,
one of those.
here-
They didn't mention him by name. You know, you don't hear him speak in that. So it's one of those. Okay, is that Boba Fett? Is he playing somebody else? Is it a clone that somehow survived? So
Exactly, yes.
they leave it on that cliffhanger of we recognize the actor, but we don't know the character at this point.
Right. So, I mean, I think most of us here were all thinking the same thing, going, is it Boba? It's gotta be Boba, but it could be a clone. But
It was
maybe
totally a
it's
shaved
Boba?
Captain Rex. Totally a shaved Captain Rex.
Yes,
Yeah.
because we all know that, well, I mean, according to Star Wars lore, the official lore from Star Wars recognized by Lucasfilm and Disney, Rex did survive all the way through, fought in the Battle of Endor. If you
Yep.
go back and watch Return of the Jedi, they kind of retconned this in, but there is a older gentleman that's among the rebels who has gray hair and a gray beard, and he's kind of tan skinned. They have retconned and said that is in fact Captain Rex or Commander Rex. I can't remember what he finished off as his rank.
Supreme
But
General. I don't know.
yes. So that is in and of itself Rex. He does survive all the way through, participates in the Battle of Endor, and survives the Battle of Endor. So it is very possible that it could have been a shaved Rex, although throughout the entirety of Rebels, he was rocking a beard. So kind of hard to believe that he would have shaved, but, you know, I don't know. Maybe he's got some bantha poodoo in his beard or something.
It could be, it would be interesting, yeah, to see how many different clones survived and, lived on in their own thing. And I mean, he looked so battle torn, which, yes, obviously you could be like, Boba Fett probably would look quite haggard, as you mentioned earlier, but it really was ambiguous enough that it's like, well, it could be a clone. I imagine clones would be pretty battle scarred as well.
Right. I know, like, the one thing, like, clones genetically do age a lot quicker than, than normal people. So, I mean, like, Rex, in there in Endor, looking, as gray as he did, he realistically wasn't as old as he looked, but was genetically engineered to age quicker like that. So, I mean, there's probably not a whole lot of clones left. And if they are, I mean, they're, the equivalent of, like, 70-year-old or 70 to 80-year-old men at this point.
Very true.
But they could
Although
still be around.
Boba, Boba was an unaltered clone. That they did make sure to mention that in Episode 2.
Yep.
Sorry, that's Episode 2 of the movies, the prequel trilogies, not Episode 2 of The Mandalorian. In Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, they did make mention that Boba is an unaltered clone, as that was Jango Fett's real one major request for offering his DNA to the Grand Army of the Republic.
I mean, it's a pretty, pretty low-end request, do you think?
Yeah, well, when you're a notorious bounty hunter making money, zippity doo dah all over the galaxy, room, board, and a free kid. What can you say?
Well,
Yeah, and it's not
take
like it's
much.
costing the Camino or the Camino people, the cloners, to really create just another clone. And I mean, they don't
Right.
even have to alter it. So I'm assuming they were just like, all right, we don't have to pay you any more money beyond your initial sum.
I'm just
Go ahead.
imagining there's some Camino and engineer sitting in a room and there's just a giant button that says copy and he's just sitting there pushing it over and over like a freaking fax machine or something. Just dead-eyed look, just staring at the wall, hitting this button all day.
Well, I mean, you saw the Kaminoans; they're pretty dead-eyed to begin with.
Well, that's true.
But so we've wrapped up Episode 1. Episode 2, as we said, Chapter 10, The Passenger. This sees Mandalorian find a ferry, a charter that he needs to deliver to a planet to help him find other Mandalorians. So his charter, this episode, I think was, I don't know, I think most people were kind of torn about this one, really. I mean, in one aspect, it was kind of neat. We go back to an ice planet. We see ice spiders. The characterization of the ferry charge, who is a, for lack of a better term, we'll call her Frog Lady, is transporting her eggs back. But then the really decisive part is the child continuously eating her offspring.
Well, I mean, it's established somewhere that whatever that species is, we still don't have a name for it. They are omnivores. I mean, they'll eat plants, but they're more prone to eating meat. Hence the sharp little teeth they have. So it makes sense that he's doing that. But at the same time, it's like, no, stop eating the babies. Bad Grogu.
And I just remember watching that whole episode, and the entire time I was just dumbstruck by like, he's a little monster. He's eating the eggs of sentient beings, which I mean, I guess we see in Star Wars they eat sentient beings, or at least semi-sentient. You know, like the little Kowakian monkey you see on like
Right.
spits all the time. But at the same time, it's still very odd. Like he was very cute, and it's one thing when he's eating little frogs. It's another thing when he's eating the unborn children of a species that apparently it's the end of their line. We don't know if the species itself is dying, but at least that particular family's line is, in jeopardy of
Right.
disappearing.
Ah,
Yeah,
genocide.
Yes, genocide. It's delicious.
Apparently.
So the episode, in my opinion, felt a little slow. It was there wasn't. I mean, it was good exposition, I think, but there wasn't a lot going on. Some of the action was a little slow. The story itself felt a little slow, and to me, it was just kind of it was an okay episode. I think I'd maybe give it a 7 out of 10 if I'm ranking them amongst other Mandalorian episodes.
Now,
The most interesting part to me was the fact that we found out that Baby Yoda's a genocidal little monster.
now one thing that was neat, those spider creatures. I don't remember what that creature is called, but that's the same species that you see in Star Wars Rebels.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, that was a callback to Star Wars Rebels.
It's also an interesting callback because they were created originally. They're based off of Ralph McQuarrie concept art for Empire Strikes Back for visiting Dagobah. They were supposed to be a species of spider that were just chilling out in the background in the swamp.
Really?
But it ended up never being used. But when they made Rebels, they took that concept art and they reincorporated it into those creatures.
Now, like I will say, like in Rebels, I mean, yeah, they were creepy. They were big spider things. Seeing them, in a more realistic depiction, I mean, those things they're horrifying.
Yeah, I mean the mouth looks like for lack of a better term, vagina with teeth.
I was gonna say a butthole with teeth, but yeah.
Well, all right. I guess you guys are gonna be the ones to say it.
Well, I mean, we say it, and we'll just own it.
You stand by your buttholes and vaginas with teeth.
Yes.
Yes. So
it had a very alien feel as well. With the little eggs everywhere, and then
very
like
much
splitting the egg open, and it had that horror feel. Obviously, with them chasing them, it was very much a space horror kind of vibe toward the end of that episode, which I thought was neat and an interesting direction to go. And also, not the only aliens reference that pops up in this season, but we'll get to that later.
Now, the one thing that I thought was kind of weird, I mean, the Star Wars, Star Wars in general, always tries to paint the Republic to be, the upstanding ones, the good guys, the pinnacles of what we should be to be good. But yet, you see at the very end of it, you see that the two rebel pilots that he encountered at the beginning, find him and they're like, well, you're supposed to be under arrest, but you did some stuff that we like, so we're just going to let you go. And they can clearly tell that his ship is probably not the most sound vessel at this point, and they just leave. Like, no, hey, we can get you in radio contact, you can take care of your stuff. No help of any kind. They just, all right, well, you're free to go for now, bye. They could have died on that planet,
Yeah, they very well could have, but think of it, I guess, maybe as a new age version of a bribe. I don't know. We save your ass from giant space spiders. We're not going to arrest you. We're going to kind of turn a blind eye, but I guess that means we have to literally turn a blind eye to everything, and we were never here type thing.
I think it serves as a way to establish that the New Republic is really just quite weak and still trying to get its bearings. That they don't have, like, they're probably supposed to patrol a very large sector of the Outer Rim, and they just don't have the time to help the citizen out. And so we're like, we got to peace out because we got other things that we need to do. And I think it shows maybe also, like Tim was alluding to, the rebels that eventually become the New Republic are always treated as these purely good people that we want to root for. But we saw in Rogue One that they had to do some kind of dark things.
Oh yeah.
And perhaps these people are just like that too. I mean, they're people. They're not perfect, even though we think of them as the good guys, and they had their own business that they needed to do.
That's a good point.
All right, gents, anything more on the passenger? I think we kind of covered most of the stuff there.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot more than that I can think of anyway.
No, I will add real quickly that I did enjoy the brief return of the droid Zero from the Prison Break episode, because the frog lady uses his parts to create a translator so she
Oh
could
yeah, I
actually
forgot about
clearly
that.
communicate with him, and I thought that that was enjoyable. I liked that droid and his brief appearance, and it was kind of fun to see him again.
Yep. All right. Well, if we're done with that one, then the next chapter is chapter 11, the Heiress. This sees Mando arrive on a water planet in a excessively beat up Razor Crest, which
I love
appears
the
to be a
landing.
theme. Right, which appears to be a theme in Mandalorian you know, is that Din's ship just gets the crap beaten out of it
Yes.
constantly. Yeah, so it has a kind of a rough water landing. We meet a Mon Calamarian in a cardigan that is willing to help him fix up his ship, and pays him some credits to fix up his ship, and then he goes off to find other Mandalorians. That is, after dropping off his charge, the Frog Lady, and what's left of her offspring.
I mean, she
That-
didn't seem to notice that many were missing, so
yeah, they had. I think she had maybe 100 of them. So I guess when you wind up finishing the day with 85, you probably 85 in your life after escaping ice spiders, then you're probably not gonna
you
complain
chalk
too
that up
much.
to a win.
Right.
Yeah,
So she meets up with her husband. They tell Mando where he can find some other Mandalorians, and off he goes to find the Mandalorians. And this episode is where we get to see something that fans have been waiting for a long time.
A new live action Darth Maul?
Not quite.
Oh, well. Well, then what
Close
happened?
though.
Yeah,
Close
that's
though.
true. That's true.
Very, very close. In this episode, we see the first live action appearance of Bo-Katan, who is a returning character from the not only the Clone Wars animated series but also Rebels. Played in both of those series by Katie Sackhoff, who is probably best known for her portrayal of, I believe, Starbuck in Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah,
I
I'd
believe
say
that is correct. Yeah.
Katie Sackhoff played that character in the animated versions, and she appears on screen to play Bo-Katan in live action. So this
which was
kind
a
of went
nice
full
little
circle.
thing.
And surprisingly enough, or funnily enough, Dave Filoni, who's one of the executive producers on this series, and also was one of the masterminds behind the Clone Wars and some of those characters, apparently told Katie Sackhoff 10 years ago when she first came in to do that character, is like, wouldn't it be really kind of funny and awesome if we got to play her in real life? And apparently Katie Sackhoff kind of laughed about, like, yeah, that'd be kind of cool. Never going to happen though. So
And here we are.
right, full circle. Katie Sackhoff apparently was ecstatic to play the character on screen and does it very well. I mean,
Yes.
you've been playing a character for 10 years. You've got those mannerisms down.
Yeah.
Like, there's no training or extra work that you need to do. You have played this character from their inception.
Oh yeah, and she continued her amazing performance into the live action easily.
And it must have been an interesting transition to go from the voice acting to the live action acting. And I mean, obviously, if you ever watch people do voice acting recordings, they get their whole body into it. They don't necessarily treat it any different than regular acting, but it still must have been an interesting transition to then put on all the makeup and her night owl Mandalorian body armor and actually get to fully incorporate all of that physicality along with her voice.
Oh yeah. Well, said I will say, like, another fun little character in there. You see some of the other Mandalorians that Bo-Katan is with. One of them, if there's any wrestling fans listening to this, is played by none other than Sasha Banks, who is, as far as I know, did all of her own stunts in this, which makes sense being a pro wrestler.
Yes, and in later episodes, and I think in that episode too, you see a few of her wrestling moves come out.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, Tim, you're a big WWE fan, right? Mm-hmm. So I imagine that was probably a nice little nugget for you.
Oh yeah. Well, when I first heard, like, there had been rumors flying around of this person is cast for Mandalorian, this person is cast, but at first they didn't say who anybody was cast as. I know a lot of people were thinking, oh, Sasha Banks. Well, she usually has like bright, vibrant colored hair. Maybe she's playing an older Sabine from Rebels. But as we find out, that ends up not being the case. She's just another Mandalorian who serves under Bo-Katan.
Yes, whose character's name I believe is Casca.
I
Casca Reeves.
thank you.
Yes,
Yeah,
Casca
the name
Reed.
escaped me.
Yes. So, Mando finds his Mandalorians, and we find a little bit more information about why Bo-Katan's there, what she's doing, what she's been up to. Apparently, to give a brief synopsis, she's basically trying to build an army to take back Mandalore after it was um, raised and taken over by the Empire, and she was kicked out. So she's working on trying to do that, and to do that, she also has to go after Moff Gideon, who we haven't mentioned on this podcast yet, was the big bad from season one,
Yeah.
played by none other than Breaking Bad's Giancarlo Esposito, who was Gus Fring. So I can't think of anybody better to play a sadistic, maniacal bad guy.
Yeah. Well, see, he did such a good job. I mean, because he was very methodical in every single thing he did, but he was also obscenely composed in it. Just his demeanor, he nailed it. Well, say, and also in the meeting of Mando with the other Mandalorians, we do also get a bit of an explanation about the whole helmet thing, which has been kind of a thing since season one of, well, why can't the Mandalorians take off their helmets? We've seen them take off their helmets before. They finally kind of explain that the newer style Mandalorians, they take off their helmets. The Mandalorians that don't follow the old traditions.
Yeah, they're also
Yes.
kind of considered a bit of a cult.
Yeah.
Right. He's referred to as being a part of the Children of the Watch, which seems to be a splinter group off of the Death Watch, which were, of course, featured in Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, as being kind of like a pro-militant Mandalorian terrorist group that
Very much
Bo-Katan
so.
was briefly a part of.
Yeah, that's true. She was.
Right, which fun little nugget for you folks. The leader of Death Watch in the in the Clone Wars TV show was a character named by Pre Vizsla, who was voiced by Jean Favreau, who is the executive producer and one of the main writers and directors of The Mandalorian. So he's been actually doing stuff with Star Wars for quite a long time, known Dave Filoni as well for quite a long time.
See, I forgot he did the voice for him. I completely
Yeah,
forgot about
he
that.
also in season one he also does the voice of the big Mandalorian that has the minigun in the
Oh
very
yeah,
first
yep.
episode.
I want to
Who's
see more of
also
that guy.
known, yeah, who's also known as Vizsla. That's the character's last name. I don't remember what his first name is, but supposedly unrelated to Pre Vizsla from the Clone Wars.
Yeah, I'll believe that when we see it. That seems
Yeah,
like
we'll
too,
just
that seems
assume
like
that
too much of a
Vizsla is a
coincidence.
common. It's the Smith or Miller of Mandalorian last names.
Yep.
I can see that.
Yep. So this episode, we see Mando, through some happenstance, teams up with Bo-Katan and her team, and they wind up going after a Imperial, I guess, transport. I think is what it is,
Yeah.
in order
Yeah.
to steal some weapons for her campaign to take back Mandalore. By doing this, Bo-Katan agrees to tell Mando where he can find a Jedi.
And yeah, they leave it on that nice little cliffhanger too.
Yeah.
Well, and they leave it with her name dropping the Jedi specifically. Like once they
Yeah.
complete their mission, and well, actually, a couple things happen. Once they get to the cockpit, Bo-Katan interrogates this officer who was going to suicide drive the transport into the ocean. Reveals that Moff Gideon is still in possession of the Darksaber, and then after that, she reveals that the Jedi is none other than Ahsoka Tano.
Which, I mean, yeah, when she drops that, I'm like, holy crap.
Yes, which for the casual viewer that's never watched Clone Wars or Rebels are like, okay, just another name. But if
Right?
you're one of those people that actually stuck with, a lot of Star Wars extra media and content, you got that nice little nugget of, oh my god, yes.
Yep. So it was a good episode. It
Oh,
gave
yeah.
us a lot of fan service, and it gave us another cliffhanger ending, which is apparently a favorite within this season.
Well, I mean, what better way to keep people watching? If you give them all the answers, right in that episode, it's like, oh, well, I can just skip the rest of it. You want to keep them going, keep them coming back.
Oh, sure, but I mean, there's some series that kind of prescribe to the serialized versions or the more episodic versions.
Villain of the week
you
type
know,
stuff.
Yeah, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, we know that there's an overarching theme in Mando. I mean, we saw that in season 1. We're kind of seeing it at this point in season 2. We understand, the main goal is for Mando to find the child a Jedi to train him. I mean, we assume it's a him at this point. We don't really know otherwise. He's referred to the child's always referred to as a boy, so I'm just going to assume it's a boy, and for the sake of
Hopefully they did check under his little cloak there.
Right, he bent over and showed him his dark side.
Like my green thing, don't you?
Wow. Remember to get your Grogu spayed or neutered.
So, we kind of wrapped up episode 11, chapter 11, the Heiress. As Mando gets his ship, the Razor Crest, it's in at least a flyable condition.
I mean, at the minimum, yes.
Yes, has some extra Mon Calamari or Quarren decorations in it.
Right.
Well,
so
part of their repairs are them throwing up fishing nets over the windshield. I mean, because that'll make it structurally sound, right? Right.
And leaving a space squid to almost attack Baby Yoda.
It's fine. That's air fresheners.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. So, we see Mando leave this water planet with the busted up Razor Crest and the child in tow, and then head off into the sunset, a la, old westerns.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, then next episode, chapter 12, The Siege. We see Mando return back to the town that he so quickly shot up and then left in the first season of Mandalorian, and we see him actually join forces with some old faces, some old friends. We see the triumphant return of Greef Karga, played by Carl Weathers, basically the guild master that we saw in season 1, and we also see the return of Cara Dune, played by Gina Carano, who's quickly become a fan favorite with her cool.
I am a fan.
Yes, with her
super awesome.
Cool attitude, her kind of laissez-faire, her one-liners. She's very much a very strong female character within the Star Wars universe. So we see Mando drop in, so to speak, into this town as the Razor Crest once again has another hard landing and establishes.
How is that ship still standing at this point?
Right. So we see him, kind of pick up and join Mando. So, with that, we also see another character return that I don't think we really expected to see return. And Keenan, I know you're a big fan of this character. Do you want to provide the introduction on this one?
Are you speaking of Mithril?
Yes, I am.
Yes, Mithril, who is played by Saturday Night Live alum Horatio Sands, who, of course, for people that have been watching The Mandalorian, would be Mando's first bounty that he picks up in the very first scene of the very first episode, who, as last we saw, was fated to go way of Han Solo and gets frozen in carbonite. Because apparently after 5 years, that tactic became very well known throughout the bounty hunting galaxy, I suppose. He pops back up again. Yeah, right. So he pops back up again, Mithril, now forced to pay a life debt, essentially, to Greef Karga. He's trying to pay off the money he stole. And I guess he had a sentence of 350 years he has to work off?
Something like that. I don't quite...
Hello?
Yes.
I think we lost Ian.
Oh no, he's disappeared.
Well, last
secretary and accountant.
Oh, hey, Ian, you're back.
No,
hey.
I'm still here. Oh, that was odd. I could hear you guys just fine.
I was gonna say, oh god, his computer blue screened again. That's 2 weeks.
No, we'll just chalk it up to technical difficulties. Sorry about that, folks. Again, we'll maybe edit that out in post. Probably not. Tim's a lazy editor.
Editing? I just hit the record button and go. One and done,
just
baby.
Just add some annoying blue, white noise kind of thing at that moment. Just beep.
Oh, we lost Ian again.
Yeah, we'll start throwing in some of the old sound effects. So yeah, we see the return of Mithril. The general plot of this episode is, besides Mando showing up on the planet to try to get his ship fixed again,
Again.
He's looking for help from Cara Dune, from uh, Grief Karga, and they say they're willing to help him if he provides some help to them. Which, again, kind of a running theme in this show. You scratch my back, I scratch yours, type thing. It's a bartering system.
It
We all
works.
know that Imperial credits aren't worth anything anymore. So, uh, the target this time, the episode's called The Siege. So what are they going to do? They're going to go attack an Imperial fortress.
I mean, like you do.
Yeah, which is conspicuously never addressed and whatnot in the end of season 1. You would and it seems to not be terribly far away. You would think this
Yeah.
very large facility would have played a very large role in the end of that season, and that they've just left it there for whatever reason.
Well, I mean, do you
Well-
think that's where Gideon was holed up before he showed up in season 1? I mean,
Based on the way the
that's
episode pans out, I would say probably. I mean, we see an awful lot of stormtroopers show up to whatever town this is that they live in at the end of season 1 very quickly.
Yeah.
Yes,
They show
and
up
they're very
in
shiny,
speeders.
and all the troops at the at this fortress in this the siege episode seem to be having well maintained and looked after armor.
Yeah, that's
So
a good
very
point.
likely could come from the same area. I mean, it just they do pop in real quick.
Right. So we see our intrepid foursome. I'm just gonna go with foursome because I can't think of any other better name. Foursome going to this base, which apparently is at the edge of a volcano or a lava pool or something like that. I don't know. Apparently,
It seems like a great place.
right. Geothermal power. The canyon that the base is built at the very top of has an elevator down to it, and apparently the canyon floods every so often with lava. Anyway, so the
More
duo
design
go
flaws.
and right. The duo goes, and we see Mando use his new trusty shiny jetpack, which we've seen him use periodically since receiving it, in order to help them infiltrate the facility. And surprisingly to me, they actually drag Mithril along with them. I figured he was just going to be kind of like the getaway driver, where they make him stay with the speeder. But I think they do actually address that in kind of a funny way.
Right.
So
Well, they knock some time off of his sentence for helping him.
Yes, they keep saying, "I'll knock 50 years, 30 years if you keep doing these things," and so he very begrudgingly is like, "Okay, I guess."
I got nothing better to do.
yep. So our
And plus,
intrepid
fear
foursome-
of being in the canyon filled with lava kind of encourages him as well.
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe a little.
Yeah, a little bit. So as our band of merry men lays siege to the fortress, you see them slowly moving throughout it, and we start getting a little bit of an idea of some of the stuff going on in with at least Gideon's forces and what Gideon's trying to do. They find a recording of the Doctor from the first season,
Yep.
talking about cloning technology. And you actually see them walk by some bays that have deformed creatures in them, which we assume, I have to assume, are failed clones. So you could say maybe this
Snoke.
harkens to, right. This harkens to the new sequel trilogy, and with, maybe this is the, how we start seeing Snoke and the return of, who.
Yes, and in Pershing's message to Moff Gideon, we also hear a slight reference to something that is a little divisive among fans. He refers to it as an M count, but of course we all know what that M stands for.
Money.
Midi-chlorians.
Oh.
Yes.
Yes,
the
the
child is
midichlorian.
the highest money count we've ever seen. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
the
a very
midichlorian
Disney
count.
thing.
Yep.
Well, see, and somebody was saying that in the scene where it pans over the whatever they are in the tubes there, that you hear a snippet of Snoke's theme play in the background ever so slightly. And like I truth be told, I haven't gone back to rewatch it to see if that's the case, but I've heard several people say that.
Yes, I've also heard that too. So, and I mean, as Tim said when he coughed Snoke, they have that very deformed but humanoid look. I mean, it's very difficult to see the Vats themselves, but they definitely have that vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we get that nugget, but I think of more importance to this episode is a question that fans have had since the very first Star Wars movie, A New Hope, came out, which is, why don't the Imperials use guardrails?
That's something that I don't know if it's just an aesthetic choice or if they just need to get a new architect for all their stuff. They really need guardrails.
Yeah, they hate that, and they always build like gigantic cavernous pits around everything as well. So it's like not only are you just not having basic safety precautions, OSHA would be all over them, but it's
Oh
just
yeah.
like you're doing it in the most dangerous of places possible. And look at how narrow the walkway was for Mithril to go and mess with this control panel. They don't care.
Like, yeah, it'd be one thing if like it was a large platform that was raised like 2 feet off the ground. Like, okay, somebody might twist an ankle, whatever. But yeah, like you said, they just like, all right, we called this the death trap room. Well, that's what the last 5 have been called. Well, you're starting to see a theme here, guys. You know what you signed up for.
I think it points to the fact that the Empire is cheap. They mass produce things and they're like, I don't give a crap about building guardrails. That's irrelevant. Stormtroopers are cannon fodder anyway.
Very true.
Well, I think it also harkens back really to, I don't know that we can 100% blame the Empire. We could probably blame Palpatine for it, though, because if you go back and look at shows like the Clone Wars, the TV show, the Clone Wars, inside the Star Destroyers, none of the catwalks have guardrails either. None of the facilities in the Star Destroyers back then have any kind of guardrails or anything like that. People just walk around freely. Apparently, I don't know, maybe there's grav boots or something in this future that just nobody uses? I don't know.
Good. Save the credits and not put in guardrails. Good.
Maybe we should also blame the Kaminoans, because I'm assuming they're the ones that helped design the early Acclamator and Venator class Star Destroyers.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm trying to remember if there's really any guardrails on Kamino, and honestly, sadly enough, my memory more harkens back to Star Wars Battlefront 2 when you play on Kamino, and there's really no guardrails.
I mean, Django and Obi-Wan end up just sliding right off the edge of one of those things, and it's constantly raining and slick, so...
It's fine. Well, I mean, if Kaminoan falls, I assume they're aquatic, so they'll just fall in the water, and they'll be alright, I guess.
I mean, they have those weird feet. Maybe they have like suckers on the bottom of their feet, and they just they're kind of like a gecko or something.
Well, they also walk so slowly and gracefully. Maybe they just have supreme balance in their long, weird, spindly heads.
I mean, this is very fair. So yeah, I mean, we see, the question is still asked. Why don't the Imperials use guardrails? And I think even some of the stormtroopers make comments about that as they're trying to ward off the folks laying siege to their fortress.
I'm trying to think of a single time that I've seen guardrails in Star Wars now. This is going to keep me up tonight.
Well,
I think honestly, the only thing I could think of is maybe on like the base that the Separatists were staying at on Mustafar. I think there were some guardrails until Obi-Wan and Anakin walked off on the like giant metallic arm thing.
No, I can think of one on Geonosis, the battle arena scene. There is a guardrail up where Dooku and all of them are standing.
I think that's just a balcony box. I don't know that counts as a guardrail.
It keeps them from falling off. It keeps them from falling off.
It's not like just an open, flat balcony. So I'll count that.
All right, that's a win for me. I'll take it.
We'll allow it. The goal of their mission was to destroy the base. They initiate some kind of reactor failure, lava, boom stuff, goes up in flames. They escape on a military transport and get chased, and ultimately wind up back in town where Mando's ship is now fixed up. The Razor Crest is basically brand new.
Now, I will say, I did like that chase scene. That was very well done.
Yes, it was very fun. It included a callback to, they did it in Season 1, but obviously it's a callback to Return of the Jedi, Scout Troopers, and the speeder bikes. and then which apparently they're not very good at driving because one immediately crashes and dies as
Yeah.
they're like just launching off the base. Which I'm like, this show really has a hate boner is the best word I can think of for stormtroopers. Like, I know that it's a joke that they're not effective, but man, are they just like bumbling Three Stooges kind of people sometimes.
That guy's last words were, "Check this out."
Check this cool trick, cool trick, and then just blows up.
Hey man, hold my spatska.
Hold my blue milk.
So, yeah, the chase scene was really cool. One of the things that I thought was really interesting from a behind-the-scenes perspective is Carl Weathers actually directed this episode.
Really?
So, yeah, I didn't know if you saw that in the credits or not. Carl Weathers himself directed the chapter 12 of The Siege, and directed and starred in it. I thought it was a very well done episode. The action was just right. The humor was there. It was one of those episodes that I really felt good about, even though there wasn't a whole lot of information that's given out. I mean, there's little bits and pieces to kind of move the story along. This kind of felt like a good solid mid-season, feel good episode. Just kind of single on its own episode.
Very much.
As a whole, The Mandalorian is a show that is very good at when they have tangential side quest type episodes. They're still very entertaining to the point that you sort of don't care that they're not necessarily progressing the main narrative arc that much, because at least they're fun and they're respectful to Star Wars lore and have good action and humor and stuff. So this one was I think one of the better examples. I'd say better than the second episode of the season that included the ice planet. Like, that was a side quest one as well, and it was okay. Like you said, it was kind of slow though. This one was fast paced and kept things going. So it was enjoyable.
I think now that you said side quest, I realize now why I didn't really care for the second episode so much. It was a giant escort mission, and for anybody that has played a video game, everyone knows that escort missions suck.
Yeah, at least he wasn't given a fetch quest.
Well, yeah.
I need you to bring me 5 womp rat pelts.
Oh yes. So yeah, to me, actually, one of the better things about this episode was also the ending, where the same two starfighter, X-wing pilots that have appeared in previous episodes show up again in whatever the city is and start talking to Cara Dune, who is a former rebel drop trooper. And they talk about if she wants to go legit and join as a marshal, join the New Republic as a marshal. So it kind of leaves her with a bit of a dilemma in my mind.
And I think it was also I mean, we'll get into this more with the next episode as well, but the series is done ultimately serves as a jumping off point for a lot of the new shows that were announced on Disney Investor Day. And I think these two fighter pilots from the New Republic are probably going to reappear, I'm assuming, in the show that was announced, The Rangers of the New Republic. And I think they're trying to kind of get them in there. And I hope that's the case, and I hope that Dave Filoni's character, because he plays one of the other pilots, whose official name is Trapper Wolf, which I think is a hilarious name as well. I could see Dave Filoni in his little cowboy hat being like, what would be a cool name? Trapper Wolf.
Trapper Wolf was a renegade starfighter.
So I think it was a good. It does bring an interesting point to Cara Dune and a conflict with her, but I do think it's a little bit of a backdoor way of kind of getting that show started, and also potentially teasing that maybe Cara Dune will play a large role, if not a starring role, in that show.
I hadn't thought of it that way. Yeah, that could be.
Well, as we wrap up Chapter 12, The Siege, the next episode is one that I think we're all going to really, truly geek out about.
Oh, yeah.
So, Chapter 13, dun, 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 The Jedi. Now, this episode opens to probably some of the biggest fanfare that could possibly have been had in, Star Wars fandom. I wouldn't say the biggest, but certainly pretty big fanfare. This episode opens on kind of an unnamed planet, kind of actually looks a little bit like Mustafari, really kind of hazy, brownish,
Sans
dead
lava.
trees everywhere. Yeah, dead trees everywhere. But, I'll cut to the chase. This is where we see the first appearance of live action Ahsoka Tano.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Now, like the one, like I'm surprised that they dropped that immediately off the bat. Like it's I figured, all right, there's gonna be a little bit of build up. You'll see her maybe halfway through, but no, it opens up focused on her, which is I'm not opposed to. I was just surprised.
Well, not only is it focused on her, but it's focused on her being a badass.
Yes.
Lightsaber fighting through the forest, cutting down enemy troops, just
With like no effort, no effort.
just going whole ham on these guys.
Yeah.
and it was very well done. It was the choreography throughout this particular episode is well done to show um, kind of the grace and athleticism that she has in the cartoons and translating it in a realistic way. And it was also very similar to the prequels and how they had the very acrobatic, flashy lightsaber fighting styles, which we haven't seen, since the prequels came out. The lightsaber fighting was much more heavy-handed in the sequels, and obviously it makes sense Ahsoka would fight that way since she's from that era.
Now, in your guys, kind of segueing off of that, what do you guys prefer more? Do you prefer the prequel style of lightsaber fighting or the original trilogy style?
Well, for me, the original trilogy was obvious. It holds a special place in my heart because it was obviously the first introduction I had to Star Wars. It was, it's just got that gravitas to it.
Oh yeah.
And who knows? Maybe it won't age so well in another 40 years, but probably to me, I probably won't care. My kids will be watching stuff in like 5D, and I'll still be watching my old Star Wars Blu-rays. Anyway, but the fighting in the first trilogy, I think is a little bit more classic. Don't know that I'd say fencing, but a dueling style.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the fighting is
Mhm.
based off of real martial arts and really more samurai kendo type sword fighting. So the styling and the way they hold their sabers and all that other stuff is all based on like the samurai. So it's a little bit more wooden, I think, in the first one. It's very much swing a few times and then back off, and then swing a few times and then back off. There's no like extended fights in the first trilogy, and maybe it's just a budgeting and technology thing. And then
Right.
then the prequel trilogy, it was much more extended. There was longer fights. It was more fluid. I think the grace that
Very
was
very
there.
Matrixy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
at times.
yeah. So I think there was a lot of grace to the prequel trilogy, but I don't know. I really don't know if I have a preference.
I,
All
I
right.
would say that the original trilogy fight style was, I think, for budgeting and just obviously the action choreography and whatnot was kind of time consuming. But I think they were going for an emotional weight. There's a lot of emotional weight between all the fights. Like nothing about Obi-Wan and Darth Vader on the first Death Star fighting is impressive technically, but especially with the knowledge of the prequels, there's a lot of emotional tension there, and that's what's more interesting than whatever they're fighting in.
All right. Yeah, I could definitely see that one.
And and I also think that perhaps the two different styles show a reflection of the changing times within Star Wars. At the time of the original trilogy, the age of the Jedi has been gone for almost 2 decades. Nobody is trained to fight like that anymore. All the Jedi are dead, basically. It's basically just Darth Vader and a few other holdouts. And so they're not, no, Luke isn't going to be trained in any way to be acrobatic and fluid like that anyway, whereas back in the prequels, that's at the height of the Jedi Order, and where all that training and classical training and whatnot would have been more prominent.
Well, that's true. And I mean, even looking back at the original trilogy, apart from when Obi-Wan has the little training droid thing shooting at Luke, you really don't see him get any kind of formal lightsaber training. I mean, even when he's training with Yoda, it's all using the Force and reaching out through that. You don't actually see him do any lightsaber training.
Right, which you could presumably only assume that he maybe gets some hints from maybe some Jedi lore or whatever that he picks up on in between episode 5 and 6, and that's how he learns how to fight. He presumably does it essentially self-trained.
Right. Yeah, very much so,
Well,
actually.
the other thing though is that they tell you. I mean, they blatantly show you Obi-Wan Kenobi's Force Ghost in Empire Strikes Back. What's to say that Obi-Wan's Force Ghost can't come to him and provide more instruction between the movies?
That is true.
Yeah,
that is
absolutely. That's a great point. Hey, look at that non sequitur.
true.
Going
Right?
back to the episode, Ahsoka Tano kicking ass. It was awesome.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, and Rosario Dawson, I just got to say, she did a phenomenal job as her.
Yeah, I thought she did a very good job. Face-wise, she matches up with Ahsoka very well. Her body movements were really fluid, so I think she did a good job.
When and she's
I will say that there was some apprehension that it didn't sound like Ashley Eccleston, but Rosario Dawson is a great actress, and so I very quickly ignored that. But it would have been nice to have hear that familiar tone.
Well, see, and Rosario's right around the same age that Ahsoka would be at this point in the timeline too. So I mean, she's kind of fitting that as well, which I thought was another nice touch.
Yes.
Yep. So we see Ahsoka. Jesus, Ahsoka.
Ahsoka Sano.
Ahsoka.
Yes.
Ahsoka's more. Does she have some ganja with her too?
She's feeling.
Well, I mean, she's on kind of a. I mean, the planet is awfully smoky. Anyway,
it's just all Ahsoka out in the woods.
Right. That's how she's able to move so fluidly. So, we see Ahsoka trying to get into this fortress. This ex-Imperial officer is apparently in charge of this town and threatens to kill civilians and whatnot. And this is where many people might not know it, but this is where the other aliens reference that Keenan was talking about so long ago comes into play. Keenan, you want to take that one?
Yes, so the town is being lorded over by this magistrate, as she's referred to, who's ex-imperial in some sort, and she seems to have perhaps an ex-imperial sharpshooter or a stormtrooper, or maybe just a mercenary that's wearing kind of stormtroopery armor. But he is played by none other than Michael Biehn, who we would know, of course, from Aliens. And general kind of like 80s, early 90s sort of action icon. So it was there. We had a very direct Aliens reference there with an actual actor from the series.
See, and I really liked what they did with his character in this one, especially the final standoff between him and Mando. I thought was very well done. But I'm jumping ahead there a bit.
I think you're all right. We don't have to cover every minute of every episode, so we see right. We see Mando. We see Mando arrive on the planet. He goes to the town, meets with the magistrate, and once again, the same theme of "you scratch my back" comes up, and the magistrate wants to hire him to kill the Jedi who is laying siege to her town, and offers him. I don't know if we're going to just call this a very convenient plot device or what, but it's a spear made of pure Beskar. Which, if you don't know much about Beskar, it is both blaster proof to an extent, and also is lightsaber proof.
Resistant
to a certain extent, presumably. I mean, I would imagine that if you held a lightsaber up against it for an extended period of time, it would eventually go through.
Well, you do kind of see that when, again, jumping ahead here, when you see, some lightsabers clashing with the Beskar, you do see it heat up quite a bit.
Yes.
Yep. So Mando accepts the job offer to go kill the Jedi. I think all of us will agree it's kind of a hidden thing that he doesn't necessarily agree to go through with the job, but he agrees to find the Jedi,
which is another kind of interesting point on the evolution of his character throughout this. Like season 1, he was very much this is the way, and that's all there is to it. Season 2, you slowly start seeing him kind of, especially after meeting Bo-Katan, you see him kind of start going into more of a gray area. It's like before it was, if you take a job, you do the job. That's it. That's honor. And now it's, well, he's taking a job because it's pointing him in the direction of where he needs to be. He's not necessarily going to do that job, but he took the job. So you're kind of
Right.
seeing that
Well,
evolution of his character.
and he never necessarily says that he's gonna. I don't think he gives any direct acknowledgement or confirmation that he is going to go kill the Jedi. I think he just kind of is like, all right, well, tell me where she's at. So I think he almost like could loophole out of it, but it does seem, yeah, a little veering from his very strict kind of adherence before.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So Mando goes off into the forest and tries to find our hashish smoking Jedi. Probably easy to find her if you just follow the cloud or the smell. But goes off into the forest and does run into Ahsoka, and we do see a kind of a short battle between the two, where they exchange a couple of blows. Nothing lethal, nothing that's damaging to anybody. But then Mando eventually is able to kind of get a word in and say, "Hey, I'm not trying to kill you. I've got a green goblin that I need you to look at."
I mean, it's a little more eloquent than that, but I mean, yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, you don't want to feed him after midnight or get him wet, though.
Right. So this is also a pretty pivotal point in the series in that Ahsoka, as the really only other Jedi or Force user that we've run into in the series at this point, is able to commune with the child through Force powers, through telepathy. And this is also where we learn the name of the child.
Yes, we do.
Which you may have noticed Tim referenced a few times earlier in this podcast. So the name of that child is
Grogu.
Baby Yoda.
Baby Yoda. Grogu.
Yes, Grogu. So we learn the name of the child, Grogu, and apparently it also becomes a bit of a running gag that when you say his name, he makes a weird noise and looks at you. So
he does a little chirp, yeah, kind of thing.
Yeah, does a little chirp. To me, it always sounded like the noise that the monkeys make in the Jumanji movie with Robin Williams.
Oh, dude.
So that's always what it just reminded me of every time he makes that noise. So yeah, we learn the name of the child, which is Grogu. And then we start seeing yet another exchange of things. Mando tries to push not really push the child, but tries to get Ahsoka to take the child, but she refuses, points him in another direction, and basically asks for his help. Friend, you scratch my back, I scratch yours type thing. They lay siege to the town, and what ultimately culminates in more Ahsoka badassery by taking out some hunter-killer droids.
Yes, which is great. Great KOTOR reference there again.
Yes.
Yep.
The HK series droids,
Yep. Takes out these hunter-killer droids and then goes and fights the magistrate who is using the Beskar stick. And then we also see, as Tim mentioned earlier, the fight between Michael Bihn's character and Mando's character, which really winds up being more of an Old West style standoff. The gunslingers, standing in the middle of the town as as tumbleweeds go by and waiting for the clock to strike noon.
Now, I will say, I'm not a big fan of like old style, like Clint Eastwood westerns and whatnot, but this scene was just so well done.
Well, and I think what makes it interesting is it's very juxtapositioned with each other because you have Ahsoka and this magistrate having a very like almost Akira Kurosawa kind of like Japanese fight going on, while at the same time Mando and Michael Bihn's character have this old Western standoff. And I think that those two styles are both hugely influential to Star Wars as a whole originally for George Lucas, and it's interesting to see them being very directly contrasted at the same time.
Oh yeah, very
right.
much so.
And I think even the directors, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni and the other directors that are in the series have even said that they directly draw and want to keep that same aesthetic. So they draw, from those old Sergio Leone films, the old Westerns, and then the Akira Kurosawa films and they're kind of blending these two together because again, those were the inspirations behind a lot of the stuff that went on in the in George Lucas's original trilogy.
Oh yeah, very influential.
Yep.
Um,
So, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to actually bring up another interesting thing that we sort of glanced over, but I think is big news. Not only did we learn earlier with Ahsoka communicating with Grogu that his name is Grogu, but we also get actual some backstory on
Oh
him a
yeah.
little bit. We learn that he was a youngling at the Jedi Temple and survived Order 66 because someone, don't know who, was able to sneak him out, and he's been essentially on his own and hiding ever since, because presumably whoever whisked him out either eventually was killed or for some reason had to leave him.
My money's on Mace Windu, just because I
That'd
want
be
to see
so
Sam
great.
Jackson come back.
He wants to come back, man. So just
Oh, yeah.
do it.
I know.
Yeah, Sam. Hashtag Sam Jackson season 3.
Well, I mean, I've heard people say everything from Obi-Wan took him since he was one of the first Jedi on site to be there, to Anakin spared him for some reason. I mean, like, pretty much you throw a name of any Star Wars character in a hat, draw it out, and somebody has said, "Oh, this person saved them." Bib Fortuna saved the child.
Oh gosh, it would be. I kind of hope actually, if it's not Mace Windu, I kind of hope it's just an original character who actually ultimately doesn't really matter. They perished or whatever. Because I do think it would get a little too fan servicey if you bring too many different characters in. But Mace Windu is like the one fan service character that I'm like, yeah, it's fan service, but man, is it awesome.
The one other character that I could see them doing is and I cannot remember the name of the character from the newest Star Wars game, which I can't even remember the name of that
Star
right
Killer?
now.
Oh, Cal Kestis.
Cal Kestis, thank you. Yeah.
And Sayre. I've heard some people be like, maybe it was Sayre who did it.
Oh, yeah.
But
no,
she wasn't on planet. I think she was away from Coruscant, so I don't think she could have done it. But
she was elsewhere during Order 60. Was she on Kashyyyk? Or no. She was elsewhere. I know that.
Right.
Well, why don't they just
Cal
have it?
Kestis would be interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, considering that wouldn't work either, because
he's off planet too.
Yeah.
He's like on a Venator class, I think, at some point.
Yeah, it's true, because he ends up escaping through an escape pod, so it couldn't be him either. That'd be neat if they somehow worked that in, but...
Yeah. Well, I mean, it could even be Kanan Jarrus from the Rebels series.
That's true.
Ezra's teacher, because he was a youngling during, and I believe he was at the temple during Order 66. His master sacrificed, I believe it was a girl, herself, in order for him to be able to escape.
Yeah, that is very true.
There's a lot of possibilities. Hell, who knows? Maybe they're gonna pull like a whatever, and it's gonna be Shakti again, because she apparently she is the undying.
He dies
Jedi.
and doesn't die. Yeah, all the time.
And going off the Kanan theory, like it can't be him or his master. I actually just recently picked up the hardback of the Kanan Jarrus comic miniseries that actually if you guys get a chance to go through it, definitely give it a read. It's actually really good. It gives you a lot more of his backstory, starting from when he was a youngling, at the temple, up to becoming having a master, being an apprentice, and actually going through Order 66 and what he did to survive on his own. It's actually a really good read. But yeah, that would have been interesting if that piece of, that little piece of lore didn't exist. Having it tie into more, they keep seeming to want to tie into Rebels, which I am not opposed to. But
right,
it's Sam Jackson. It's Sam Jackson.
Yeah, I do also quickly want to bring up too that the Grogu, the revelation of his backstory, to me was good, because it was I'm going to call it a dig at the sequel trilogy, and more specifically the Last Jedi as a whole, because it's the point that I want to make is that Ahsoka very much says that he's had training. So we've seen Grogu, lift a woolly mammoth creature or whatever and do all these amazing things with the Force. And yes, he gets tuckered out and passes out after it, but he still seems quite strong.
Oh yeah.
And you could have gone way of Rey and have it be that he just, for whatever reason, doesn't require any training to do any of these powerful things. But alas, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have respect for the lore and whatnot established in Star Wars, and we're like, nope, he's not just naturally gifted. He's had training.
Which I think was a nice little thing to do.
Yes. Yep. I think it's ridiculous how superhero-y Jedi powers got into the sequel trilogy, and apparently you don't need any training.
Right,
Or
yeah.
training doesn't matter, because like Kylo Ren's presumably been training for years and gets just destroyed by Rey every time.
Very true.
Maybe we just chalk that up to ego. He thinks he's such a badass, so he lets himself get, be. He's defeated by his own ego, basically, or self-sabotages,
Right.
self-sabotaging. But circling back to the episode, the Jedi, we end the episode, where we end the fight with between Ahsoka and the magistrate, by Ahsoka defeating her. Doesn't kill her though,
Yeah.
and asks her a very important question that fans of Star Wars, I'm sure, probably exploded about and were really geeked out about. And that question was simply, "Where is Thrawn?"
Oh man, dude, when that thing came out, I geeked out so much when she uttered that one little sentence.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was technically reintroduced in Rebels, and that was great. But the fact that it was uttered by a live-action Ahsoka Tano, therefore, heavily implies that we're going to get a live-action Thrawn, who I've seen some people fan cast with Benedict Cumberbatch, which would be interesting.
I have seen that as well. I mean, he's got the look.
He's got the cheekbones.
Yes, he does. Cheekbones.
Yeah,
for
I mean,
days.
that would be. I mean, well, look at all of the range of characters that Benedict Cumberbatch has played. Doctor Strange, plays
and Dormammu.
Khan. Yeah, and Dormammu plays Khan in the Star Trek movie, the new Star Trek movie.
Yep.
I'm noticing a space theme. Sherlock Holmes. A multitude of characters here. So
yeah,
there's certainly precedence that he could do it, and I think he has such a wide range. And there's also been fan castings of him as Spike Spiegel in a live action Cowboy Bebop movie. And I've seen some of the artist renditions of it, and it's actually pretty good. I would not be opposed to this. I just don't know that he is spry enough to be a convincing Spike. Anyway.
Yeah.
So yes, we get the utterance of Thrawn, and if you guys saw the Disney Investors Day announcements, Ahsoka is getting a series, or I'm not sure if it's a limited series or a movie, but it looks to be a live action series. So that is probably where we're going to see a dovetail off with Ahsoka, and probably the larger appearance of Thrawn. And I kind of have a theory about all of Disney's Investors Day stuff, and I talked about this with Keenan before. But the general theory is that we have all of these different pieces going on. We've got Rangers of the New Republic, we've got Ahsoka, we've got Mando. I think there's some other series. I feel like these are maybe going to culminate into the last season of Mandalorian, with like almost an Avengers style team up, where we see these people from these different series wind up doing like some big group adventure, because
that could be pretty cool.
Team ups.
Oh yeah.
And I theorized with Ian when we were talking about this that it could be similar to the Netflix Marvel shows, Jessica Jones and Daredevil and things like that, where it eventually culminated in the Defenders, which was essentially a Marvel Avengers team up kind of thing. But I think that final story might be essentially building up to a live action but TV based adaptation of the Thrawn trilogy.
Ooh, that could be really interesting to see.
Yeah, I think that would be a good culmination.
I mean, the big question though, since we're obviously going to be getting Thrawn in some capacity, are we getting Ezra back?
I think
I would think in her show that we're going to get a live action Ezra, or at least some kind of answer to it, and possibly a live action Sabine Wren as well.
I'd be okay with both those. I mean, because at the ending of Rebels, I mean that was the last we saw of Ahsoka, was her and Sabine went off to go find Ezra. Now, I mean, it was Ian. I think you and I actually talked about this. That Dave Filoni said that that last scene in Rebels, where you see Sabine and Ahsoka getting ready, it's not really clear, and he even said that they kept it purposely vague as to where in the timeline that particular scene actually takes place. So, I mean, that may be before we see her in Mando, or she might not have met back up with Sabine, and we're seeing what happened before she met back up with Sabine. I mean, he kept it. They kept it vague on purpose, and I'm just wondering how much that's gonna kind of factor into this. Is she currently like teamed up with Sabine, but they're separate and already looking for him, or is this the beginning of her journey looking for him before she meets back up with Sabine? Who knows? Who knows?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I mean, all interesting theories, all stuff that I fully believe that Dave Filoni, being the architect of basically this new series verse of Star Wars, is going to probably give us all the answers that we're looking for.
See, and I'm just
It's
gonna go
just
ahead and
going to
say
take us a while.
I'm just gonna go ahead and say it now. They just need to put Dave Filoni in charge of Star Wars. I'm just gonna say it.
I mean, I think
I'm fine
ostensibly
with
they have.
Jon Favreau is a big role in that too,
Yeah,
because I
that's
would
true.
say his experience with the multi-layered universe of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is very applicable to this. He obviously has a love for it too, and he's just a very good filmmaker. Dave
Very
Filoni
much
is
so.
also a good filmmaker, but he is more out of his depth or inexperienced with live action. So I think the two of them complement each other quite well.
That is true. So let's put both of them in charge of Star Wars.
Yep, I think that would be a good thing to do. So, with that, I think that about wraps up the Jedi. We see Mando and Grogu leaving Ahsoka as they fly off on in the Razor Crest, which takes us to the next episode, Chapter 14, The Tragedy. So if episodes 1 through 4 were kind of building up and laying out the groundwork for this season, episodes 5 through 8 are basically Star Wars fanboy fan service wet dreams.
Yeah.
So,
oh yeah,
Chapter 14 sees Mando, taking the child to an ancient location, an ancient Jedi location on the planet Tython, which I believe, and I think I've stated this before, Tython, I believe, was the name of the planet that you start out on in the MMO game, The Old Republic. If you play as a Jedi or play as a Jedi character, I believe the planet is Tython.
I believe so, or at least I know
I believe
you
that is
visit
correct.
Tython, but yeah, I think that's where you start.
So, I mean, there's a nice nod back to, again,
Yeah.
more old Star Wars lore, kind of bringing some of that back into canon. So we see Mando show up there with the Grogu. They take him to this hilltop where he basically sits on a concrete ball and communes with the galaxy.
Which they described in the earlier episode, I guess, as a Jedi seeing stone,
Yeah.
part of an ancient Jedi temple, and he's using it to commune with the Force and essentially project his presence to other Jedi that could detect it.
Now, I will say, kind of backtracking a little bit for people that haven't really watched it yet. At the end of the last episode, Ahsoka is like, look, I can't train him, but you can find somebody that can. And she says, he has the child has a lot of fear in him, which kind of really takes her back because she's seen her, her former master Anakin go through that. But that's why it's just Mando and Grogu without a Jedi in tow.
Yes.
Yep. So as Grogu is communing on this stone, we see probably one of this season's biggest nerddoms. Not that we haven't had enough of those already.
Oh yeah.
A very familiar ship flies
Yep.
into view and lands next to the Razor Crest.
Oh yeah.
And we see a familiar cloaked figure walk out of this ship. And Mando goes to parley with said figure, who winds up being none other than the intergalactic badass from Kamino, Boba Fett.
Oh yeah.
And of course the ship being the Slave One, the iconic ship with the I love every sound design choice about the Slave One. The sound of the engines, the sound of its blasters, the seismic charge, everything about it is fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. And so we see Boba showing up, and Mando's there to, kind of, hey, don't touch my kid, that kind of stuff. And Boba's basically like, no, dude, we're good with the kid. I want my armor back.
I'm just here for my pants.
Pretty much. So, there's a bit of an exchange there, and then we actually get another character return.
Yep.
Who could that be, Johnny?
Survey says
Fennec San. So, we remember seeing last time we saw Fennec, she was shot through the gut,
Yes, she
left for
was.
dead on Tatooine, with a mysterious pair of boots walking up to her.
Hmm.
Foreshadowing?
Yes, with the classic little spur jingle.
You're right.
Correct. So what we find out is that Fennec was picked up by Boba Fett, and I wouldn't really say healed, more like he gave her a robotic stomach to keep her from dying.
Pretty much,
Yeah,
yeah.
she's got Robo 6-pack abs now.
Right. So yeah, Fennec and Boba are there, and as they are parlaying, out of the sky comes some stormtrooper dropships. Because what we didn't get to in a previous episode was that the Mando ship has a tracer that has been placed on it. That was
placed on when they were in Navarro, when they
Yep.
were with sieging the base.
Yep. It was placed by one of Grief Karga's repairmen, who actually winds up being an Imperial spy, as far as we know. Grief Karga doesn't know about this. We
Yep.
can at least continue believing that that character is awesome. So we see these dropships come out of the air, and they look very reminiscent of First Order dropships that we saw throughout the sequel trilogy. So, foreshadowing much? Maybe.
Yeah.
So we see these dropships come down, and stormtroopers start disembarking, and you know Boba and Mando's exchange hasn't been finished, so they have to defend themselves against these platoons of stormtroopers. So that's what they do.
And they do it very well.
Yes,
Yes.
we see Fennec back in action as an intergalactic sniper, picking off stormtroopers left and right, and then we see a side of Boba Fett that we didn't expect to see.
Him actually being
We
the
all
badass
wanted
of
to
legend.
see, but we just haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of parts of Boba. The first part is his hand-to-hand combat skills using a gaffy stick.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it, folks, go watch the episode, because
Yes.
he gets brutal with these stormtroopers. I mean, we see
He's
armor
savage.
shattered. Yeah, I mean, we see him shatter stormtrooper armor.
Yeah.
We see him stab people with the pointy end of the gaffy stick. Like, it's brutal. And a little bit of a tidbit for you guys. Tamura Morrison, the actor who plays Boba Fett and Jango Fett, is of Maori descent, in which are the native people of New Zealand. On set, Tamura Morrison apparently did a haka, which is the fire or the fire breath dance. It's a traditional Maori dance, and that kind of inspired Dave Filoni, John Favreau, Robert Rodriguez, who Robert Rodriguez directed this episode,
I can see it.
inspired them a little bit. And Tamura Morrison himself actually asked for a custom-made gaffy stick, which resembles more of a traditional Maori club. And so he uses that in his choreography with the fights. So that's why we see Boba Fett really kind of going whole ham with that gaffy stick, is because it was custom made for this role.
And it was, again, just an amazing scene.
Yes. So, we see the stormtroopers, we see the battle. Boba takes out several of them, and then sees the Razor Crest with the door open. So, I mean, what would you guys do if you were Boba in this situation?
I'd go get my
Well,
pants.
he's there to get his armor, so if it's available to him, why not?
Right. So as Boba disappears, Mando and Fennec are still continuing the fight. They wind up getting surrounded. Kind of one of those desperate back-to-back type things. And then out of nowhere, we see bombs drop from the sky. What could this mean, folks?
Our boy's back.
Yes. And then
Back
we
again.
see
JD's back.
Then we see the moment that everybody who saw Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi has been waiting for: the badass return of Boba Fett.
And we actually get to see him be the badass that all the stories talk about.
Right. We see him fighting. We see him using his armor to its fullest capabilities. I mean, grapple hook, flamethrower. He's got a goddamn missile in his knee.
I was gonna say, don't forget the missile knee.
Yeah. He's got like extra blasters in his wrist. He uses a pistol, which you've always seen his holster, but you've never actually seen him use it. He's always using his blaster rifle. So you see that his sharpshooting skills as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so, Boba goes just berserker on these stormtroopers, and they eventually start running away. Issuing a tactical retreat, so to speak.
Run away!
Run away! And as they are flying away, we see Boba initiate his holy hand grenade, which
was so good.
Which is the missile that is on his backpack. So we see that finally come into play as well. So not only do we see Boba Fett come back, we see him come back as a badass in multiple ways.
Oh yeah.
Not only in hand-to-hand combat, but also with the aid of his armor, and fully back as the kick-ass bounty hunter that he always should have been.
Oh yeah.
And we also see him get to use all of the tools and tricks of his trade that we know of, anyway.
Yeah. Oh, you know Boba. He didn't pull out his. I mean, he probably used a lot of his toys because he's missed them, but he didn't pull out everything he's got.
Yep. So as the fighting is going on, we see Gideon show up, and as the as the stormtroopers are fleeing and Boba destroys their ship, a laser blast comes out of nowhere and kills one of the main characters of the series.
Absolutely disintegrates it.
Yes, disintegrates it. And what I'm talking about is the Razor Crest.
Oh yeah, it's gone. It's gone.
And all the fanboys who bought expensive like scale model die-cast things of the Razor Crest were like, God damn it.
Yep. So there it is, folks. I mean, the Razor Crest is no more. There's no coming back from that. She's dead, Jim.
It's like there's not even enough for salvage at that point.
No, it is a smoking crater, having taken a full blast from an Imperial light cruiser. It's gone. And
well,
here we say goodbye, Razor Crest. Our time was too short.
Oh yeah.
And you went through hell. I mean, I think that was the most beat up character in this show.
I mean,
it is just harsh though, because it just recently got all spick and span to only get disintegrated.
And now he does recover, a couple things from the wreckage though. He gets the Beskar spear, which kind of is a testament to how durable that stuff is, and he gets the shiny little, well, for lack of a better description, gear shifter knob that Grogu always liked playing with.
Yeah, It's very touching, which is extra touching because after, picking up this ball, this happens after poor Grogu goes through some bad experiences himself, because Gideon has some extra toys that he sends out after the stormtroopers are taken care of.
Which was another thing to geek out over.
Right.
Yes, another Legends thing brought back.
Yes.
Right. We're not actually given confirmation of what they are, but we see these fully black droids exiting the light cruiser, flying down, grabbing Grogu, and then flying away. So they're robotic. They're droids. They're all in black. They look like stormtroopers. Mm-hmm. Gee, I wonder what they could be.
Yeah, like when I saw those things first coming down, I'm like, man, those things look a lot like the the Dark Troopers or the Death Troopers. And I kept watching them, going, huh, they really look a lot like them, huh?
Yep.
And then, of course, later.
Yeah, they never actually confirm what they are in the episode, but anyway, so yeah, Gideon manages to get a hold of Grogu and flies off, which leaves poor Mando, shipless, childless, with only quite literally the weapons on his back.
Yeah, he's in a bad place.
Enters into a bit of an alliance with Boba Fett and Fennec, who Boba says, I will, we will not rest until the child is back at your side. So
because he's an honorable man, you can tell, because he made an agreement with Mando that if you give me your armor, I will help ensure that the child is safe. but then they got interrupted by all the stormtroopers and everything else. And he says to Mando, "Well, I do have my armor, but I haven't completed my end of that deal, so I will help you retrieve this child."
Which really speaks a lot to the character of Boba Fett, you know?
Yeah, I mean, he
Yes.
may be a ruthless fighter and he's an infamous bounty hunter, but he's got his own code.
Oh yeah. Which
And
and speaking of code, that scene there where Boba pulls up on his armor, effectively like an ownership form. That's actually
Yeah.
that's actually been translated, and it references the Fett family. It references his father, and as well as a few other things from expanded universe lore. That now that we've seen it on screen, that's canon now. I mean,
Yes,
and
yeah. Like
they
his original Legends thing was Django was raised by a guy named Jaster Boreal, who was
Yep.
a major leader in the Mandos, and that name somebody translated the Mandalorian letters, and that name is mentioned. So
Yep.
yeah, all Legends thing can be assumed in some way, shape, or form to be true now in that aspect.
Oh yeah. Well, and they've done a really good job on that. And Ian, and I know you and I have talked about this before. That when Disney took over Star Wars, they're like, all right, all this expanded universe stuff, all this stuff is no longer canon. It's going to be considered what we call legends now. Where I mean, those things are still out there, but they don't exist. But they've They've kind of been picking and choosing from that. Okay, what do fans like? What's cohesive? What will work with what we've done? And they find a good way to work it in. Like we had talked about Thrawn earlier. Thrawn was something that was originally Legends. They brought him back in and did a really good job of that. Boba Fett's heritage, as well as his father's heritage, they've kind of touched on that. They brought that back in, and they've so far done a pretty good job of reincorporating things from Legends that people really latched onto and liked.
well, even the stuff they didn't reincorporate well, such as Palpatine being a clone. They still brought that out of Legends. That was a huge part of the Legends canon.
Or Kylo Ren essentially being Jason and
Yeah. Yep.
Darth Caedius. So
Yep.
Right.
So I mean, they've done some not so well things.
But
Yeah,
I would say that the shows thus far, the Filoniverse is doing a good job of incorporating relatively obscure things like Crate Dragon Pearls to important things like Thrawn.
The Filoniverse. That's what we're gonna. That's what it's called now.
Yep. So at the end of the episode, we see Mando basically leaving with Boba and Fennec to try to get back the child. So the next episode that we have is Chapter 15, The Believer.
Now, in the prior episode, wasn't it at the very ending where we see Grogu effectively captured inside the ship? Is that seen in that one? Or
Yes, that is at the
Yes.
end.
Okay.
I believe he's tossing around stormtroopers like a baby playing with toys.
It was a pretty good scene, but it brought up like at the end of it, you see him what looks to be force choking one of the stormtroopers.
Yes.
What are your guys? Is he force choking it? Is he doing? And I know it's another one of those gray area things. Is you see Luke do a very similar thing to a Gamorrean guard in Return of the Jedi,
Right.
But Lucas is like, oh no, that wasn't a force choke. Well, I'm sorry, but if I'm grabbing my throat and gasping for air, I'm pretty sure I'm choking.
And I think he should have owned it, because clearly Luke at the beginning of the Return of the Jedi, you're supposed to think he could turn to the dark side. He's wearing all black all of a sudden. He uses a force choke, very Darth Vader-y.
Yep.
I mean, eventually we realize he's always been on the light, but there was that risk, and I mean, we've seen Grogu force choke Cara Dune toward the end of season 1.
We did. Yep.
So I think he was probably force choking. I think he was tapping into his dark side powers, which I think also is a good way to connect to the previous episode with the Jedi, where Ahsoka says, I sense much fear in him. He's got all this power, but I'm afraid that he won't be able to control it. And I think that's showing him tapping into some of those dark side powers, and why he really does need some guidance, or lest he be a very dangerous.
Well, I mean, dark side, light side, it's
Sunny
to
side.
me. Yeah, to me, dark side, light side, it's kind of these different powers are kind of a gray area, right? It's what you do with them that really makes you evil. Now, again, there's some powers that are blatantly bad, like force lightning. I think they say that comes from malice. Or
Yeah, I was gonna say I can't think of a friendly way to electrocute somebody.
Right. Well, if you think about it, most powers that are Jedi associated are things that you could use offensively, but aren't inherently that way. Like you can use them in a way that doesn't cause any harm. Whereas Force Lightning and Force Choking, there's literally no way to use that in a way that isn't harmful.
Right.
Like,
Well,
they're
maybe if David
inherently-
Carradine had used Force Choke, he wouldn't have had that big of a problem.
As soon
Anyway.
as you said that, Keenan, it got quiet, and I'm like, all right, who's going to say it first? Who's going to make some kind of choking comment?
So yeah, no, I mean it. But again, to me, it's because then you get into the expanded universe stuff, the gray Jedi and all that other happy crap. But I mean, it's really Grogu again is untrained, so he's just using the abilities that he is basically making up out of his mind. I mean, he has some training, but he doesn't have a lot.
Yes.
So, we don't know what the extent of his training is. Apparently, it seems to be kind of minimal, really. Mostly just like how to tap into the Force, how to meditate, how to, steal cookies from little kids. That kind of stuff.
That was such a great scene.
So, it's I think there's some gray area there, and I like to believe there's some gray area because of some of the stuff that Luke Skywalker did in Return of the Jedi, and even in the God forbid the sequel trilogy kind of stuff.
Right.
Some of the things that he did there, but he he's Grogu's using the survival tools essentially that he has at his disposal at this point.
Yeah, I'm not saying that he was, turning to the dark side. I just think that he was tapping into the feelings, the fear and hatred and whatnot that leads to the dark side. I don't think if using the power, unlike what Yoda says, I don't think using the dark side will instantaneously make you become a dark sider.
Right.
I think you just want to not tap into it as much as humanly possible. At least you fall under its sway.
Very true. Very true.
And Baby Yoda or Grogu was, we're seeing that potentiality. So I think it just gives the audience more reason to be like, man, Mando needs to save him quick before he goes any further down that pathway.
Yeah, very true.
Yep. So, jumping back to the next episode, The Believer, we see Mando and Boba show up to Navaria or whatever it is, and hooks back up with Grief Karga and Cara Dune. Basically, he's calling an audible here and calling in all the favors that he can.
Oh yeah.
To find Gideon, and so they bring back a character that I didn't really expect them to bring back from season 1. They conscript Kara to locate Mayfeld. Who, if you remember from season 1, he and his band of merry men were invading the prison station to try to break out Twilight, I think. And then they were caught. He went to prison. So we see Cara Dune, basically, kind of using some underhanded methods, using a little bit of her martial pull to get Mayfeld out of prison.
Well, say, and yeah, and also this episode also gives us confirmation that she did decide to become a marshal. Then.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And what's the first thing she does? Abuse her power.
Well, as you do.
Yeah, immediately, basically.
As you do. So we see Mando and Kara spring Mayfeld and basically say, look, here's the thing. He took my kid. I need to know where Gideon is. You can get me access. So then they go to this jungle planet to basically find to an Imperial base that produces or processes. What is the stuff? Highly explosive.
Explosium.
It actually appears in an episode of Rebels or in Clone Wars too. It's called like Rodenium or like Rodendite or something like that. But
Rodenite
whatever, it's space nitroglycerin basically.
I'm still gonna go with explosium.
We'll go with that. We'll go with that. So so Mando and Mayfeld need to infiltrate an Imperial base. So they basically hijack a cargo transport to drive this explosium to this base in order to be able to get a hold of a code stick to be able to find Gideon's light cruiser.
Now, it is worth noting that at this point, Mando is actually wearing, it's not Stormtrooper.
It's a Tank Trooper
Tank
armor.
Trooper, thank you. Tank Trooper armor. And there is a joke made about, I guess one helmet's the same as any, huh?
Well, it actually leads to the whole episode is called The Believer, and you kind of ultimately see that the theme of this episode is having your beliefs challenged. And
Yeah.
Mayfeld kind of eggs on Mando being like, well, what's the rule? Is the rule that you can't take your helmet off or you can't people see your face? And those are two different things.
Yeah, yep.
And Mando has to wear this armor in order to infiltrate, but like he's obviously breaking the rule unless the rule is not to show your face.
Right.
It's unclear, and Mayfeld makes all these comments about how everybody has these codes, but when things get rough, people are willing to change it all of a sudden, and that you don't need to necessarily adhere to this dogma. You just got to do what you got to do to survive and do right as best as you can.
And it's definitely some good foreshadowing for later in the episode as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so Mayfeld and Mando steal this transport. They're driving this unstable cargo to the base. They get attacked by essentially natives who I think just don't like the refinery being there. I can't really remember. I mean, they're trying to blow up the cargo.
They refer them
Pirates.
to as pirates, but I do think, yeah, they're just natives of the planet trying to get the colonists off of their planet.
I can see that.
So, fights ensue. It's kind of a la, I don't know, Speed or, The Matrix. I guess we'll go with the Matrix 2, sorry, where they do the highway thing where they're fighting on the back.
Oh, yeah.
They're fighting on the back of the semis and stuff like that.
I can see that.
Yeah, there's no bullet time, but it's still, pretty cool.
Yeah, so they eventually prevail against the pirates and they make it to the base, and then everybody's applauding them because they're the only shipment to make it that day. All the other shipments have been blown up.
It's also an interesting moment because you actually get a moment where you're cheering for the Empire because they're ultimately saved by some TIE fighters swooping in.
Yeah.
And so you get this weird turnaround of where, yet again, we're challenging our beliefs. Normally we're seeing, X-Wings and stuff, and we're like, oh, sweet, awesome, the Republic or the Rebels or whatever. Now we're cheering because the Empire came in? So you feel kind of weird about it.
Well, I just, like, the one thing that kind of, and again, I'm thinking too deep into this, you're telling me that the Empire doesn't have any way to verify the identity of people that are in their vehicles when they're entering into, a very important facility? These guys just get out and they're like, yeah, they're wearing our armor. They must be us. Cool, let them roam free.
Yeah, I mean, Mayfeld walks in without his helmet on, and none of them are like, hey, I don't remember this dude ever being here.
Yeah, I've been on this job for, 5 years now, and I've never seen this guy. Is he new?
Yeah, and when did he come in? We didn't get a new shipment of people anytime soon.
Right.
This goes back to the whole thing about the guardrails. The Empire's cheap. They're not going to waste their money on. They're not going to waste their money on bioscanners and stuff like that.
Yeah, especially since this is Imperial remnants. They're going off of whatever resources they were able to steal away as the New Republic established themselves.
They've got explosium to process. They don't have time to check this kind of stuff.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
So, as our heroes disembark from their explosium transport and make their way over to a console, the console is in basically the equivalent of the officers' lounge, which really just feels like a small cafeteria off the main building.
I mean, it's the equivalent of a teacher's break room. It's just an extra large closet that they found.
There's a microwave and a Keurig in there.
Yeah. So, okay, who ate my salad? Was it you again, Sharon?
God damn it, I had it labeled!
That's a Star Wars series I want to see.
Yeah. Who drank my blue milk?
The Imperial Break Room.
I had a roasted Kowakian leg in there. Somebody took it.
Who took my salacious crumb cakes?
Well, I'm sure that's in a cookbook somewhere. I need to find that now.
It's gotta be.
Yeah, if it's not, you heard it here first, folks. I've trademarked it. It's mine.
Well, I mean, I've got the Galaxy's Edge cookbook. It's got a dessert section. I don't think that's in there, but I know how to make a Ronto wrap.
Well, there you go.
And they're yummy.
So, as our heroes approach the officers' lounge, Mayfeld happens to look in and notices that one of the officers in there was his old CO from back when he was enlisted in the Imperial Forces,
Yep.
Imperial Special Forces. So Mayfeld has a kind of an existential crisis. I can't go in there. What if he recognizes me? We're shot. You got to go in and do this. So Mando, unfortunately, has to take the code stick, go in, and tries to use this machine.
But it's extra bad because Mayfeld is like, well, we got to cancel the mission. And Mando's like, no, we can't. And he's like, you don't understand. In order to access the terminal, it has to scan your face.
Yep.
So Mando then has to once again decide, well, am I going to have to take off my helmet in front of all of these officers and whatnot that are standing in this room?
Well, I mean, to be fair, by the end of the episode, it doesn't really matter.
True.
Yeah.
True. So, our hero has a real dilemma. Does he stick to his code, or does he do what he needs to do in order to save the child? I think you can probably guess what he did, which was he took his helmet off.
Yep, he did.
But then we have that same Imperial officer approach Mando and start trying to talk to him and ask him things, and Mando's kind of ignoring him because he doesn't really have any answers. And as the tension builds, finally Mayfeld steps in and says, "We're something like, sorry, we were in a fight. He took a thermal detonator next to the head. He can't really hear, so I helped communicate for him." And so that kind of exchange happens. So then the officer's like, hey, let me buy you guys a drink. You guys saved the day with the explodium delivery. So, they sit down with this officer, and obviously Mayfeld's sweating.
Yeah.
And then, an interesting story unfolds. And Keenan, I think you're closer to the story than I am, but I'll let you kind of go over it.
I'll kind of do this exchange. It's a very a la Inglorious Bastards in the bar scene. It's a very tense, like two people clearly like having a verbal kind of fight with each other before things go crazy. I will also note that the officer is played by, we referenced it earlier toward the very beginning of this episode, the officer is played by an actor who appears in the latest Tremors movie, Shrieker Island.
Wait, there's another one?
Yep, there's a brand new one that was released on Netflix, and Ian and I watched it, and that actor plays like a big game hunter kind of guy, and so he appears. So Tremors does also have a more direct reference into Star Wars now.
So see, I was getting us there eventually.
Yes, yeah, you brought it up an hour and 40 minutes early, but yes. But so in this conversation, the officer is cheering on how well the Empire is doing and how they're going to bring back order and stability to the galaxy and whatnot. But Mayfeld can't help himself. He clearly has some demons he's dealing with. Yeah. And he starts bringing up how the officer served on a planet called Burnin Khan, which during Operation Cinder, which is a very interesting throwback to Disney canon, because Operation Cinder is part of the main storyline to EA's Battlefront 2 game that came out in 2017. In that story mode, you find out that Operation Cinder is a military operation that happens or activates essentially if Palpatine were to die, and essentially commands all high-ranking Imperial officers to just essentially glass and orbital bombard and destroy various planets that Palpatine deemed to be traitorous in the event should he die. So it's kind of like a kamikaze last hurrah, like screw you kind of thing. And so they bring that lore into this, and I guess Mayfeld served on one of the planets that were part of that. And in this operation, not only were civilians killed, but they fired essentially on Imperial installments as well. So he talks about how 10,000 of his fellow stormtroopers were killed, for the glory of the Empire, and how he thinks that how morally wrong and disturbing that is. And eventually Mayfeld can't control himself anymore, hearing this guy vaunt about how the Empire is so great and how they're gonna do even more damage with this explosium that they've picked up. And he just kind of whips out his gun and shoots him in the chest.
Yeah, it was like I did not expect that was going to happen. And
yeah, it's the tension builds, and then it's just like, oh,
well, that happened.
And then all the officers kind of just look at them, and Mayfeld kind of casually is like, "Oh, we got to kill everybody now." So then they all start shooting.
Like, well, we're here now.
Yep. So then our intrepid heroes, get their code stick and they make a daring escape off to the roof of the building where they're picked up by Slave One and the rest of their party. And then as they fly off into the sunset, Mayfeld takes a cycler rifle and shoots one of the explodium containers, basically destroying the facility as kind of his, conscience clearing, moment. It's part of his healing process to blow the ever-loving piss out of this place.
I was gonna say it was his giant metaphorical middle finger.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean that too. I mean, besides shooting the officer in the chest.
Well, I mean, that was just the icing on the cake.
Yes. So, once they've managed to escape the area, they land on the planet. There's a bit of an exchange between Kara and Mando and Mayfeld, basically going, "Yeah, I don't know. I think this prisoner died in this operation. I don't remember. We couldn't recover the body. It's real tragedy. One of those. We're gonna turn around and walk away, and you no longer exist as who you are."
There's another time we kind of see the rebels do that in this series, where they just kind of, well, we're just gonna look over here now.
Right.
And even Mayfeld was like, so I just do I just go, or really?
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going now. That's okay, right?
Yes.
As a quick aside before we potentially move on from this episode, Bill Burr was cast by Jon Favreau because they had worked together on some other movie or did some other things. And Jon Favreau cast him because Bill Burr had been pretty famous in his stand-up for making fun of Star Wars nerds. And Jon Favreau just thought it would be funny to cast someone who's known for not liking Star Wars to be in Star Wars.
And he's such a good character.
Yeah, and he comes in and he's pretty good. It's also funny because it essentially made that there is Boston accents canon within the Star Wars galaxy.
Space Boston.
And I would say that I liked his character in his first appearance in season 1, but it was a little jarring to me to have Bill Burr. He did feel a little bit out of place in the galaxy,
right,
in this world. But in this episode, I thought his acting was very well done.
Oh yeah,
he
absolutely.
was almost stealing scenes from basically anybody. He had a lot of dramatic chew going on, and so his character was redeemed. I didn't end up even caring that he has that thick Boston accent.
Right.
Yep.
So what did you guys think? Did you think his character was redeemed in this episode, and did you find Bill Burr a little jarring at first when he first appeared in season 1?
He to me in season 1 he did seem kind of out of place, but I don't necessarily know if it was like the accent didn't really bother me at all. I think it was just his character kind of felt, I don't even necessarily want to say shoehorned in. He just felt like the odd man out in that. And as far as getting redeemed, I wouldn't necessarily, in my opinion, say redeemed is the right word, but I mean he's starting down. Well, I mean, kind of like you guys have said, shooting that officer was probably very therapeutic for him at the time, but ultimately it's going to boil down to, is that going to allow him to get over what he experienced in Operation Cinder, or is that just going to, send him down an even darker, path? Yeah,
will he forge a new way of life now that he's been afforded this freedom and essentially a restart since he's now dead?
Right. I mean, because really, in the very little that we know about his character, he's pretty much seen war and bounty hunting. So, his skill, he's got a lot of skills, but I don't know how many of those will look good on a resume at the office.
Yeah, at the Star Wars Kinko shop.
Space Kinkos.
He could wind up becoming a spice runner or something, but...
I could see him being a smuggler.
Yeah, ultimately, I think... I don't know that I would say this was about his redemption, but I think it was more about his ability to heal and start moving past the demons, because obviously in the first season we didn't know anything about really anything about him other than he was part of a band of smugglers or something like that, and they were trying to get one of their guys back.
Right. We knew that he had some history with Mando, but not a whole lot more than that.
Right. So, this was, to me, this episode was less his redemption and more just almost kind of being able to restart and end his character. I don't know that if I was John or Filoni, I don't know that I would bring him back for subsequent seasons. I think
It's a
he had
good ending
served his
point.
right. He served his purpose. He had a good component to the story, but I would be afraid that using him anymore would just defeat the character building that they did do.
No, I agree on that one.
Yeah, his arc is complete. Including
Yeah.
him further would just it would serve no point. It's just bringing back a character just because fans like him.
I mean, like maybe like have him be like a background character in a scene on some random planet, just to give that nod to the fans of, hey, he's still alive, he's doing something with his life, but not go, hey guys, look, it's our old friend, let's go talk to him. Just have him walk by and not notice the characters or something.
Right. So as we wrap up the Believer, Sorry. one of the things at the very end of the episode, if you guys remember, Mando now has Gideon's coordinates.
Yep.
And he sends Gideon a message.
Yes,
an
awesome message.
A hollow message, which basically reiterates Gideon's speech to Mando at his first appearance in the last season. I believe it's actually verbatim what Gideon said.
The only thing he changes is that Mando in his speech says that he means more to me than you could ever know, whereas Moff Gideon said it means more to me than you could ever know, showing that obviously Mando has a personal connection to Grogu, whereas Gideon only thinks of it as a tool.
Right.
Or thinks of Grogu as a tool.
So with that, that's the Believer, and then we move on to the final episode of the season, Chapter 16, The Rescue.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the longest episodes of the season. Not the longest, but it's in second place. The longest episode was actually the first episode at 55 minutes. This one clocks in at 47 minutes. Now, this episode is
amazing.
It is what every Star Wars nerd has been asking for the last 40 years.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it in itself is worth the price of Disney Plus.
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, and I have kids, and they watch the crap out of Disney movies and all the other stuff that's on Disney Plus and whatnot. But I would pay for Disney Plus 10 times over to be able to see this series, and especially with all of the stuff that's coming out after the announcement of the Investors Day stuff. But so the rescue starts off with Slave One actually giving chase to an Imperial shuttle, where the good cloning doctor is on the shuttle. And Slave One hits him with an ion blast, disables the shuttle because they're trying to get a hold of this doctor to be able to use him. So Mando and Cara Dune board the ship. One of the pilots basically pokes the bear, for lack of a better term, by talking about how he was on the first Death Star and witnessed the destruction of Alderaan, and how he would do it again. And for those of you who are not in the know, or maybe you stuck with us even though you haven't seen Mando, thank you, by the way.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Cara Dune is she's from Alderaan. That was her home planet. So when Alderaan was destroyed in her planet was gone, and that was one of the reasons why she joined the the rebellion as a dropper. And if you notice her character, she has a Rebel Alliance insignia tattooed under her eye, reminiscent of a teardrop. That is apparently something that survivors of Alderaan did as a tribute to their fallen planet.
Right, it's remembrance, yeah.
Right, it's a remembrance. It's an effigy for their fallen planet. So yeah, he pokes the bear a little bit. Cara fires back, saying, I was on the Death Star. Oh, really? Which one? And then he gets kind of pissed. He's like, well,
I thought that was a good line.
Right, millions
which
of
one?
died.
That scene I enjoy because it also essentially canonizes the hilarious conversation that Randall and Dante have in Clerks, and where they talk about the millions of innocent people that would have had to have died on especially the second Death Star since it was under construction.
Right.
Yes.
It is
So
a valid point.
Yep. So thank you, Kevin Smith, and your rant from the 90s. You are now canonized in the Star Wars universe as well. So yeah, long story short, shooty, they get the doctor, and go and find, they then go to find Bo-Katan to try to enlist her to help, board and lay siege to Gideon's light cruiser. The exchange is interesting because Mando and Boba together go into this bar where Bo-Katan is, and
two Mandalorians walk into a bar.
Nothing good happens.
Right. So they confront, or not really confront, but Mando starts a conversation with Bo and Casca, and they basically like, yeah, no, we're not bounty hunters. And Mando fires back basically with, well, I can tell you where Gideon is, which piques Bo-Katan's interests.
Very much so.
And there's a bit more of an exchange where then Boba steps in and says something, and you see a sense of recognition light up Bo-Katan's face.
Yeah.
And she even says it. You're not a Mandalorian. You're a clone. I've heard your voice 1,000 times. So, bringing all of this back together, and it's good actually to see a character that recognizes and remembers, the fact that clones exist
Right,
in this
yeah.
universe. Because it seems like it's very much glossed over in the Star Wars universe. There's this huge clone war, and there's still clones left over after the fall of the Old Republic and the Empire and the rise of the Empire. There were still clones. I mean, it's not like they just recycled them. They didn't turn them all into Soylent people.
See, that's like, if I had one complaint about the Star Wars universe, it would be that people forget stuff super quick. I mean, like, yes, I understand.
Like Jedi are almost legends by the time of the original trilogy, even though it was really only 19 years before.
Well, I mean, you would have people who obviously, were kids at that point that, saw the Jedi firsthand, and now it's like, oh, Jedi, what are those? I've never, what?
I have to imagine part of that is Palpatine's imperial propaganda to basically erase the Jedi from existence, to prevent people from remembering them, or remembering them as a symbol of order and peace.
I mean, the flip side, though, I mean, that was part of Palpatine's whole plan, was to brand the Jedi as traitors to what at the time was the Republic. So, I mean, at the very least, you think people are like, oh, Jedi, yeah, I remember those traitors. They tried to take down, they tried to take down our entire planetary government. But they don't remember them at all.
You'd also have to think, too, that, I mean, it is an entire galaxy-sized place, and so there's trillions of life forms, and there were only like 10,000 Jedi at the most.
Right.
So, I mean, odds are you very well might have heard of Jedi, but the 99.9% of the galaxy would have never actually met a Jedi.
That's a fair point. Fair point.
Yep. So, there's a bit of an exchange, some fighting going on, and they finally agree to team up to go after Gideon. So this is actually next scene is actually the first time they make direct reference to the Dark Troopers.
Mm-hmm.
The Doctor, it gives them intel about Gideon's ship, basically saying he has I believe, platoon is what he says, of Dark Troopers. And this is also where they reference the fact that these are Gen 3 Dark Troopers, where there are 100% robotics. So, for those of you that don't know, in the expanded universe, the Legend stuff, Dark Troopers were originally highly trained, I believe, half cyborg, force injected humans in some pretty badass armor.
Yeah, they were.
But and the Doctor even makes reference to the fact that these are Gen 3s, and says the biggest problem with the Dark Troopers was the human element, so they're 100% droids at this point. So we find out that they are, in fact, Dark Troopers.
Which, I mean, it also kind of goes to show just how much droid technology has changed. Because the last time we saw, that many heavily combat-ready droids was back in the prequel trilogy. And, I mean, even the super combat droids, I mean, yeah, they were capable. I mean, even the regular battle droids in numbers were super capable, but nowhere near what we're seeing with the Dark Troopers.
Yeah, but I mean, if you really think about it, the technology of this universe doesn't change over thousands of years. It's like they hit the technology peak, and then there's nowhere else to go. I mean, astromech droids have been around since the old time of the Old Republic, 1,000 years in the past. Lightsabers are 1,000 years old.
Well,
Oh,
yeah, I
even
mean
older than that,
R2D2, by the time of the sequel trilogy, is like a 70-some-year-old robot that can still interface with like all the like HDMI ports essentially of their universe.
I mean,
So it's like,
he should be in a museum at this point.
Yeah, it's like that would be like somehow me being able to have the car keys to like a Model T still working on any car I would find today.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, and it brings up a bit of a trope with like fantasy worlds and stuff like that. In stories like Dungeons and Dragons and World of Warcraft, these societies have existed for literally tens of thousands of years and have not technologically advanced beyond a bow and arrow.
Right.
And it's a question of why. In my mind, it's, for at least the fantasy World of Warcraft type series, it's the use of magic. Because they have magic, they don't have to advance technologically. You see creatures that don't use magic, like gnomes in World of Warcraft, that do have a more advanced technology. They do know magic, but they don't rely on it. So, I think in this case with Star Wars, maybe that magic is the Force, and they have reached the peak of their technological advancements because they rely. The galaxy revolves around the Force.
I mean,
Well, then also, I mean, once you create faster than light travel, I mean, there isn't, I don't think, much technological places to go beyond that.
I mean, they literally have clones, so I mean, heck, they have clones. They have tubes of magic liquid that you can toss somebody in, and they'll be healed in a couple days from just about any injury. I mean, so
they
like,
have super advanced AI. They have sentient robotic life. So
I mean, there's not really, at least with our understanding of how technology is, there's not much else that you're kind of at the pinnacle. Where do you go when you've already reached the top of the mountain?
Well, according to the villains of the Star Wars universe, just keep making more planet-killing machines, but just keep making them bigger.
Bigger.
That's no moon.
Right, that's no planet. That's no sun.
That's no nebula.
Yeah, what is
it? Black hole buster.
So I think in your description though you were saying that essentially Mando and his crew come up with a plan to storm Gideon's light cruiser using the info that the good doctor gives them, and basically they're just going to pretend that his shuttle that they've managed to keep is being under attack, which the person attacking them will going to be Boba Fett in his Slave One.
To make the shots look convincing. Oh, I will.
Yeah. Don't worry, princess.
Yep.
So, they start to execute this plan. They basically crash land the shuttle in the TIE Fighter bay to prevent more TIE Fighters from launching. Boba escapes in Slave One, and then they start, they disembark. They start laying siege to this light cruiser to try to get to Gideon and the child. So in the crew we see Cara Dune, we see Bo-Katan, we see Casca, we have Fennec going off to basically be a distraction while Mando tries to slink away to the cell block to rescue Baby Yoda. In the process, we also see Mando trying to prevent the Dark Troopers from getting after them, because the Dark Troopers, what we didn't mention before, are stored basically in their own storage area because they draw too much power to stay active all the time. So they have to be activated, and it takes a few minutes to activate them. So Mando's trying to get there to shut them down before they can fully activate. He gets there, but not until after the Dark Troopers have activated. So one of them makes it out the door, and he has to fight Mando.
It's a really good fight scene.
Yes, it establishes how terrifying one individual unit is, let alone a whole platoon.
Right, because basically this Dark Trooper puts Mando literally through a wall. But Mando is able to overcome. He destroys this one Dark Trooper. The others are locked inside of their storage area, trying to get out. But it's at the storage area is at the edge of the ship, so Mando jettisons them into space. So
now, I will also add the Dark Trooper is only taken down through the use of Mando's recovered full Beskar spear.
Yeah.
Because apparently, I'm assuming they draw so much power because I'm assuming they're ray shielded in some way because all of his blaster shots just deflect off of it. And even his whistling birds don't do much to it. It's only once he has this essentially a thing. You could basically call it a metal lightsaber since it, is basically indestructible.
Effectively, yeah.
So he stabs it. So it's like, well, they only got that one spear. None of them have lightsabers, so it's like, how are you going to be able to kill all of these things? But luckily, they get jettisoned out.
Yep. So then Mando goes off to find Grogu. Meanwhile, Kara and Bo and the team make their way up to the bridge, slaughtering stormtroopers along the way. Fennec has some pretty cool scenes in a cargo bay where she's kind of dodges blaster bolts, and sharpshoots stormtroopers. So pretty neat. You see Cara Dune go berserk mode with her heavy repeated blaster, just mowing down stormtroopers a la minigun.
Yeah, that was really cool to see.
Yep. And
it was very like Arnold, in like Terminator. It was great.
Yes. Yeah, she just goes to town on these stormtroopers,
yeah.
and then they make it to the bridge. But who's missing from the bridge?
Dun dun dun.
Is it
Meanwhile, in the cell block, Mando makes it to Baby Yoda's cell and actually chokes out a stormtrooper with the Beskar spear in a pretty brutal way.
Yeah.
He breaks his neck.
Yeah, stabs another one through the gut with the spear. Opens the cell door and there's Gideon with Baby Yoda.
And the Darksaber.
Yep.
Yes, the Darksaber. We'll shorten it up here. There's a little bit of, tit for tat, quid pro quo, then some subterfuge, and then there's a fight. Beskar spear versus Darksaber. Mando versus Gideon.
It was a really very, very well done fight scene.
Yeah, yes. It's not particularly long, but it's you see, Gideon putting everything he is. He's almost quite savage in his heavy blows with the Darksaber.
Yeah, very much so.
Well, from what I also saw and from what I've heard, that was actually Giancarlo Esposito doing the fight.
Oh, really?
It was not a stunt double or anything like that. It was actually him doing the saber fight.
Oh, nice.
And I think that kind of lends itself to the authenticity of the scene because, again, Gideon is not trained in the use of like these kind of weapons. He's not a trained force user and that kind of stuff. So he's untrained and he's really truly relying on just savagery.
And it works for the most part.
Right.
Yeah, it definitely catches him off guard, and he seems to be doing well for most of the fight.
Right.
Yes. Well, Mando eventually overcomes, takes Gideon into custody, takes him to the bridge where
picks up the Darksaber.
Picks up the Darksaber. Unfortunately for our anti-hero Bo-Katan, that's not a good thing.
Yep.
Because Bo-Katan's whole thing was she was trying to get the Darksaber because the Darksaber is a symbol. And without the Darksaber, she cannot lay claim to the throne of Mandalore. So, and then, Gideon is the conniving kind of person that he is, planned pretty much all of this out so that, if he didn't kill Mando and Mando beat him, then at least Mando would be the one to get the Darksaber. Because the Darksaber can't be just gifted to somebody. It has to be taken through combat.
Unless you're Sabine and you just hand it over, apparently.
Now, a lot of people pointed that out in online comments, and I do want to say that I think the reason why Bo-Katan is so insistent upon, following the traditional rules that you win it through combat is because, for one, if I remember correctly, Sabine didn't really win the Darksaber through combat either. She just finds it and then eventually gives it to Bo-Katan, and Bo-Katan accepts it as a gift, but obviously her leading the Mandalorians to freedom didn't work because the Great Purge happens and she
Yep.
ends up losing it. So I think she's probably just, for lack of a better word, she's superstitious and is like, well, I didn't get the Darksaber, I didn't earn it like you're supposed to the last time, so this time I got to do it right, or else, I might get the bad juju again and it won't work out just like last time.
Actually, I hadn't thought of it that way. That makes sense then.
Yeah,
And I think that explains why she needs the combat thing and isn't able to be gifted it, just like in Rebels.
She needs to show that she's worthy of being the Mandalore, not just a person that owns the pointy stick.
Yes, and I mean, and Gideon points that out. Like, she'll just be a pretender. The weapon grants no real power. It's the story that grants it, and being gifted the sword is not a good story.
That's very true. Yeah, that makes sense actually.
Right. So there is unfortunately this tension that is now building between Mando and Bo-Katan, and unlucky for our party, the tension is broken when a bunch of craft approach Gideon's light cruiser, which actually turn out to be the Dark Troopers that Mando had jettisoned into space.
Oh,
they have jetpacks.
You mean the ones that we saw fly the first time we saw them?
Right.
They have jet boots, folks. So this platoon of probably 30-some Dark Troopers shows back up on the ship and slowly makes their march towards the bridge where everyone is stationed. The bridge crew seals the blast doors to try to stop the Dark Troopers. The Dark Troopers show up, and the two leading Dark Troopers basically just start punching the crap out of the doors.
And
they rock and sock of robots their way in.
Well, yes. They do a pretty good job of it too. I mean, like
I didn't think they'd be able to get punched through a blast door, but they get through it.
Well, I mean, because for the most part, apart from when Qui-Gon starts melting a blast door, those things, for the most part, are once they're closed, you're done.
Yeah.
Right. Well, so I will say this, that the sound design in this episode is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
The sound design and the music and the composition is amazing. It builds so much tension. And the Dark Troopers have this almost like techno...
Like dubstep, Skrillex kind of stuff going on.
Right, it's like, it's like techno grunge theme that's just very ominous.
Right.
Just evil. And so, the music and tension is just building. And of course, the Dark Troopers are punching the door in line with the music, and it's almost a rhythm that it continues to build that tension. And it builds and it builds, and Gideon is sitting there. Gideon.
Gideon.
Because he's just waiting for his Dark Troopers to come through the door and destroy our party. And as this tension continues to build, there's another proximity warning. And our party turns around and an X-Wing flies by. And I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I literally got goosebumps.
Dude, like as soon as I saw that, I'm like rolling through the Rolodex in my head of, okay, who's got an X-Wing? All right, who's flown X-Wings? And like my first thought, which is who it ended up being, I won't say yet. I'm like, nah, they did, no.
Yeah, well, Keenan and I watched the episode together, and we were watching the episode together, and we kind of looked at each other and went, no, they wouldn't do that, would they? Would they do that? No.
We all had the same response.
Oh man, and I think actually, so we're watching this episode and kind of looking at each other and eyes wide, palms sweaty, vomit on my sweater, mom's spaghetti, which that is the second Eminem reference we have had tonight during our extended podcast. So we're just like, no, they wouldn't do, no, they wouldn't, no. So this X-Wing docks essentially, and you see Bo-Katan basically flipping through security footage to try to find who is in this X-Wing. And then she lands on a video, and you just see a cloaked figure walking through the hallway. in black and white, mind you. This is CCTV footage, so there's no coloration. You can't see anything.
Their video equipment. That's where they can improve their tech.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, but again, the Empire's cheap.
True.
So you see this cloaked figure, and then you see another scene, the next scene, where it's still on the CCTV footage. You see the cloaked figure fighting dark troopers and just deflecting blaster bolts and cutting out dark troopers. And the tension is still there, but it's different. It's a different tension because everyone's sitting there wringing their fingers, going, "Who is it? Who is it? Who is this? Give me, give me, give me, give me, give me. Who is it?
Who is this lightsaber wielding mystery person?"
Right. And it continues, and Bo-Katan says, a Jedi? Which piques Mando's interest, and it also piques Gideon's interest. And
who looks like he's scared shitless during this entire time.
He looks like there's just a slow dawning and realization on Gideon's face going, "Oh, hell."
Because not only is it a Jedi, but I'm pretty sure he knows full well who specifically this Jedi is.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what scares him.
Right.
Oh, he has to know.
So then the next scene, you see the Dark Troopers on a catwalk. Again, no guardrails. And then we finally see the first color shot of this Jedi. And it's actually a color shot of the lightsaber as they walk by.
Yep.
And it is green. And in my mind, I just went and giggled like a schoolgirl.
Same.
And
it was epic.
Oh,
because it's like, I mean, how many people own a green lightsaber and have a X-wing and wear all black? Yep. Oh God, all the dots connect.
Yeah.
And then the next scene, they show him with his arm extended. You can see his hand; it's gloved. You see his other hand, which is not gloved. What do you think, guys? Should we just say who we pretty much know who it is at this point?
Mace Windu.
Yeah.
Mace Windu, totally. Or sorry,
Samuel L. Jackson, back again.
It's Cal. It's Cal. So we see this trooper or this person going just fluidly obliterating dark troopers. There's no
fully utilizing their force powers. He's force pushing them off the catwalk. He's slamming giant crates against them. He's deflecting, slicing through them with ease and grace. Someone fully in tune with both their force powers and their lightsaber skills.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So
because it is Jedi Master at this point now, or soon to be Jedi Master, Luke Skywalker.
Luke Skywalker. So, and at this point, Gideon also makes the same realization. And he's been hiding a blaster this entire time and decides to, this is going to be my time. Attacks Bo-Katan, which apparently Beskar, I guess, just has a thing that it attracts blaster bolts. I don't know, maybe because that seemed that there's a lot of Mandalorians that a lot of the Mandalorian body that isn't covered by Beskar, but apparently they only get shot in the Beskar.
Yeah, and at point blank range, basically, he only hits the Beskar, but whatever, right. Plot armor.
From right. Somebody that has probably, very obviously had at least some training with, firearms since he's, a Moff. He's probably
he's pretty accurate.
Well, yeah.
At the end of season 1, he shoots the energy or the battery pack for the E-web pretty accurately.
Right.
So I mean, we'll we will say that I will say that Gideon is mildly handicapped at this point because he is wearing handcuffs. But
true.
But so Bo-Katan falls to the side, stunned. Obviously that she was shot. And then he takes aim at Baby Yoda. Mando steps in, saves him, and then Cara Dune smacks him in the face with a butt for rifle. Which
because he was going to just kill himself. He puts the gun against his chin, about ready to end his own life, realizing, Luke is coming and I'm surrounded. There's no hope. But Cara Dune doesn't allow him to get off that easy.
Oh yeah,
right. Smacks the gun away, smacks him in the face with her rifle. He falls down. And that's actually it for Gideon for this episode. But then we cut back to Luke Skywalker in the hallway again, fighting more Death Troopers. and then I'm sorry, Dark Troopers. And then he walks into the elevator. The Dark Troopers that are in front of the bridge turn around and go to meet him at the elevator. And any Star Wars fan at this point is going, "Oh my God, is he going to get his? Is he getting his Vader moment?
Is he getting a Rogue One? Are they doing a Rogue One? They're pulling a Rogue One.
And guess what, folks? He didn't get a Rogue One. No, I'm just kidding. He totally got a Rogue One and just obliterates Dark Troopers in this hallway, cutting them apart, force pulling them to slice them, force pushing them, and then force crushing them.
That was the cherry on the cake right there for me.
Oh yeah, that got me. I'm just like, that was so awesome, and it also hints at his he like father like son, he won't force choke somebody necessarily, but he will force crush the crap out of a non-living robot.
Also,
well, I mean, if you think about it, though, Mace Windu did the same thing to Grievous. That's why Grievous had the rasp. Mace Windu force crushed Grievous in the original Gendy Tartakovsky 5-minute little cartoon segments that were hand animated for the Clone Wars. It was like the prequel to the Clone Wars.
Yep.
It was like six episodes or something like that. It's like 6 to 8 episodes or something. They're only 5 minutes long, and Mace Windu force crushes Grievous, I think, in the very last episode, which causes him to have the limp and the rasp because his organs are now damaged.
Now, the animated one's not considered canon anymore, is it? Just the CG one?
The CG one is canon, and I think, I don't know, those cartoons were so good, though. I wish that they would be considered canon because there were really cool fight scenes.
They were very well done.
I don't understand how they could not be canon when pretty much all the stuff that was in it leads up to Clone Wars and
right.
Well, I mean, they reuse a lot of it because Asajj Ventress made her first real appearance.
That is true,
and they reuse her in Clone Wars, and she has basically the same story arc, but they do things a little different. And then, like, the character Dirge was quite interesting, but he doesn't reappear in the Clone Wars, so he's not canon anymore.
Right?
Didn't they kill him though?
They do kill him within that show, yes. But I mean, he could have reappeared in the Clone Wars, the CGI series, but he doesn't.
True. See, and I will say, Asajj is from that era one of my more favorite characters, especially if you read some of the canonized novels about what she did after all the Clone Wars stuff. She's actually a really, really interesting character. Really good character arcs too.
Yep.
But yeah, so Luke, Rogue One hallway scene. We get the light side version. We get to see that Jedi can also be total badasses.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so, going back to something we mentioned earlier, Bo-Katan, she's alive. The Beskar just took the hits, and she was kind of stunned. Although she does walk with a limp now, so I don't know. Maybe they just still feel the impact, but it's just not lethal. I don't know.
She might have, she twisted her ankle or something when she fell.
Yeah, we'll go with that. So, Mando lets Luke in, and they reveal his face. And what did you guys think?
Like, it was a shock to see young Mark Hamill in a new, effectively Star Wars live action property. Like, all of us were like, okay, he's got the green lightsaber, he's got the one gloved hand, he's got the black robes, he's got the X-wing, it's Luke Skywalker. But the moment where he took off his hood just cemented it for me, and I was beside myself seeing that,
And not only do you get the hood coming off, but you also get the like music playing, with it, which gave me chills. That made me almost cry. It was just
same.
Very epic. But then, as far as the CGI goes, for one, I did not think they were going to go the CGI route. That's kind of why I thought Luke Skywalker wasn't available, because to me, I'm like, they're not going to do CGI Luke, and they're probably not going to recast, even though Mark Hamill's given his blessing for Sebastian Stan.
Which, I am behind that 100%.
Same. He's a good actor, and he looks a lot like younger Mark Hamill.
Yes, he does.
But when they lift it, you see him, and I thought, I was just too into the moment to really care, but upon closer examination, it's a little off. It's not the worst
Yeah.
de-aging I've ever seen, but it does feel a little wrong. So I would think that if they ever do future Mark Hamill de-age, that they spend a tiny bit more time making it look a little bit better. But it's also Mark frickin' Hamill back
Yeah.
as real Luke Skywalker, not Jake Skywalker from The Last Jedi.
You mean drunk Uncle Luke?
Yes.
Now I will say that like I do agree with you on that. It did rewatching it does look a little off. I actually saw a video on YouTube where somebody put that scene, but then they themselves made a deep fake of Luke, and the deep fake actually looks better. Like there's just
Yeah.
there was something about the de-aged one. It wasn't bad. I want to make that very clear. I did not think it was bad, but there was something in his jaw area that just that's at least to me that's the area I noticed it the most where it was just not quite right. And I don't know
the lips
if
didn't move right for me.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Do you guys know? Did Mark do the body work for that? Is that him standing there and
No.
they de-aged his face, or do they have another actor?
No,
in the cast, there is somebody listed as the body double for the Jedi.
Okay, so then I'm wondering if it's just a matter of that body double's face didn't quite match up to how young Mark would look, so they had to tweak it so that it wouldn't break the illusion effectively. I'm wondering if that has something to do with it.
So
Probably likely.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it is. So it is. Mark Hamill is credited, and it is his voice that speaks when Luke speaks. But yes, Keenan was correct. It is a body double. I can't remember the person's name, but did a very good job with the action scenes.
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
very very much so.
So yeah, I mean, again, this was the episode that we've been waiting for forever, especially those of us who saw the original trilogy.
Oh yeah.
Who then saw the sequel, who also saw the sequel trilogy, and were so disappointed by drunk Uncle Luke because we never got to have Luke being a real badass.
No, see, like I'm odd man out here. I like drunk Uncle Luke. I think he's one of my favorite characters of the sequel trilogy, just because of how crotchety Mark Hamill portrayed him. I loved that.
Yeah.
But to your point,
Mark Hamill's great, so like anything he does, I'll still support on some level.
Oh yeah. But to your point, we never really got to see him be that badass Jedi that that people tell stories about around the campfire. You never get to see that. So I mean, it was nice to finally get that, and to see him in his prime too.
I mean, at the end of Return of the Jedi, I mean, even the name of the movie implies this. I mean, the story ends with Luke being the Return of the Jedi and presumably, carrying on Yoda's wish of starting the Jedi Order. And so, for 30 years, we didn't get, what would happen after that. But, I mean, presumably, you're left with this expectation that he's going to become a badass Jedi Master. But we never ended up ultimately seeing that. And, I mean, we could argue the merits of whether, grumpy old man Luke was, the right direction to go, but we still didn't get that badassness though. Like
right.
we wanted to see him be a Jedi Master, because in that, I mean, he severed his connection from the Force for most of the movie, so you don't see any of that really.
That's true. That's
so
true.
we just get the expectation that the movie itself even leaves us with, but we no one has gotten in all the years until this episode.
Very true.
Yeah,
very true.
It's it was a very it was a very poignant moment, I think, in Star Wars for most of us fans. And at this point I've watched several hours of reaction videos to it, and it just seeing the amount of people that go crazy and start crying once they realize it's Luke and everything else. It's just it's a testament to how invested people are emotionally to this universe and this mythos and everything else. And it was this season was a perfect shout out to the fans in every way possible of Star Wars. They gave us back the stuff that we lost with the sequel trilogy. We didn't get badass Luke. We didn't get badass Boba. We didn't get Boba at all.
Yeah.
There was so much that we weren't given, and this is the movies that we wanted. But yeah, so wrapping up the episode, Luke comes back, talks to Mando. Mando convinces Mando to let the child go, and Mando starts to say his goodbyes, and is so in touch with the baby, with Grogu, that actually takes his helmet off.
Yeah.
For the first time in front of Grogu. Grogu has never seen Mando's face, as far as we know, until this point.
Yep.
So there's a very, very emotional exchange between them. And then again, kind of as a nod to the fans, R2D2 comes in the room, and we get to see R2 again. Not
the real celebrity cameo of this episode.
Dude, and also just as a like a little child, just how adorable and great is it that Grogu and R2D2 are obviously going to be friends.
Oh yeah, like I want to see that series. I want to see the adventures of R2 and Grogu.
Yeah, and also think about the way that R2 and Luke must feel seeing Grogu.
Oh yeah,
being both like, this is wow, a baby Yoda. They would have to make that. It's like, wow, it's so odd to see one of his kind again, and get all those memories. And you can kind of see the look on Luke's face when he does pick up Grogu and hold him in his arms as he goes to take him away. You can see almost that look of recognition and almost that tinge of sadness of remembering, Master Yoda.
Right. I mean, and Luke's gone full circle from being trained from somebody like that to now training somebody like that. Again, we still don't know what that race even is, but still, yeah, it's full circle.
And the other thing, I think, Keenan, you and I talked about this before, is given that R2's never had his memory banks erased, as far as we know, it's very possible he knows who Grogu is. I mean, he would have spent time with Anakin and Obi-Wan in the Jedi Temple. I have to imagine they would have seen the younglings at one point. I mean, it's not like there's thousands of younglings in the Jedi Temple. It seems like there's a relatively small batch. So I have to imagine that R2 knows, or at least recognizes, Grogu.
Right.
And Grogu may very well recognize him. I mean, R2-D2 being excited might not be just him recognizing a species of Yoda. It might be specifically recognizing Grogu.
Hey, I know this kid.
Like, oh crap, you're from like 60 years ago.
Well, and some people have actually suggested that theory that R2, as another name out of the hat, that R2 is the one that saved Grogu. And I'm like, okay, now we're reaching.
Yeah.
He just shoves him inside of him, like, all right, you're gonna be okay.
Ignore the body.
R2-D2 is a Swiss Army knife. He probably just has like a stroller that can come out of him or something.
I could see that. His head pops up and you just put a baby right there.
He has like an inflatable like the little baby backpacks you can wear.
There you go.
I can see that. He's got everything else.
Yep. So, Grogu goes with Luke, and that's the end of the episode.
Well, almost the end of the episode.
Well,
correct.
Now,
so
then we jump... Before we get to that, though, with everything we've seen with Mando, I mean, he's completed this mission of bring the child to one of his own kind. He now has the Darksaber, which is setting up that conflict between him and Bo-Katan. Where do you guys think the series is going to go next?
My personal hope is that the show is called The Mandalorian, not The Mandalorian and Grogu. And I feel like, Dave Filoni has explored Mandalorian history heavily in both the Clone Wars and Rebels. And I think that setting up this conflict with the Darksaber and Bo-Katan is leading to the show The Mandalorian starting to dive deeper into specifically Mandalorians. And I think it's going to basically follow Bo-Katan and Din, who, now that he doesn't have Grogu, is going to essentially, I think, take it upon himself to work with Bo-Katan in uniting Mandalorians. It's going to be them flying around trying to reunite the Mandalorian clans to retake Mandalore. But I think Din is going to essentially be Jon Snow, and that he's going to be viewed as a reluctant leader because he's the rightful owner of the Darksaber. And so the Mandalorian clans will agree to take Mandalore, but not under Bo-Katan, more under Din Djarin. And I think that's going to slowly piss off Bo-Katan to the point that, with Gideon possibly whispering in her ear as well, will eventually lead to them having a conflict with each other.
That could be a really interesting way to take it, actually. I like that.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Keenan on this. I feel like they're going to start exploring more of the Mandalorian component of this. Do I think we have seen the last of Grogu? No.
No,
Absolutely not. Just from a money standpoint, they're not going to get rid of him.
Exactly.
No, I mean, he might even show up towards the end of next season. Who knows? I mean, have we're going to see more of these characters. We're going to see Grogu. As much as I'm invested in, I love this show. It kind of makes me wonder: are they gonna do a Luke Skywalker show? Maybe, please.
Well, and I've heard some people say that maybe Grogu will appear in intermittent scenes throughout season 3 where we see him training with Luke. So like Grogu won't be with Mando, but we'll still get to see Grogu.
That would be a really interesting way to do it. That way he's still, at the fresh and making appearances for fans, but it won't be centered around him.
Yeah, it won't be Din just basically always trying to protect Grogu. We can
Right.
move on to this new, arc of saving Mandalore.
I could see that. I could see that working pretty well, actually.
But
Yeah.
a new Luke show would also be fantastic. So I'm also fine if they just want to have him have his own show. I will pay all the monies for that.
Yes. So, I think I have a lot of faith in Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni based upon the first 2 seasons and Filoni's previous work with Clone Wars. He is a master at storytelling and was mentored directly in this universe by George Lucas. And Lucas made appearances on the sets for Mandalorian. So, Lucas is he's not directing, but he's still providing creative input to this universe and still, giving them feedback about how all this will work. So, season 3, I'm looking forward to. I really don't know what they're going to do, but I'm sure I'm going to enjoy it no matter what.
Now, I think my thoughts on it, I think, are going to lead into what happens after the credits. But the show is called The Mandalorian. Not The Mandalorian Din Djarin, not The Mandalorian Bo-Katan, The Mandalorian. And I started thinking about this more after a conversation you and I had, Ian, about this post-credit scene, that the show is it's going to transition to be about the Mandalorian, whoever the title character happens to be at the time. So what happens after the credits, guys? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so credits roll. Then all of a sudden we jump to Tatooine.
Again.
And Jabba's, yes, that's apparently a planet favorite for being, out in the middle of nowhere, dust ball. We go back to Tatooine, specifically Jabba's palace. And we go, camera goes into Jabba's palace, and who do we see in Jabba's palace?
Bib Fortuna, of all people.
He's packed on a few pounds and is kind of looking huttish himself.
Yes, very much so. He's kind of taken on the appearance of Jabba.
Yes, so he's sitting there with his underlings and another Twi'lek chained to the throne, like they do.
Do you think that those just come standard if somebody buys Jabba's palace? Well, we've got the kitchen over here. It's very roomy. We have your throne. The Twi'leks come pre-installed.
Yeah, I
mean, they're just really shit on. It's terrible.
But poor Twi'leks.
You're right. So we see the scene unfold, and then we hear blaster fire. Someone gets shot from the stairwell, and Bib Fortuna looks at one of his underlings and shoos them off to the door to check it out, and utters, what phrase does he utter, gents?
McClunky.
I had to pause it. I'm like, they didn't just drop McClunky, did they?
They did.
So I love the fact that they're able to poke fun of themselves a little bit and be like, why not? Let's own McClunky.
Yes. So McClunky, I underling runs the stairs and then promptly gets shot in the face. And then you see Fennec come down the stairs, and she takes out all of his guards, and then takes out the chain holding the Twi'lek because she's cool and maybe just girl power.
There we go.
And then of course there's Fennec. So who else is going to be there? Boba comes down the stairs, and he's got his signature blaster rifle. He's got his armor. And Bib Fortuna recognizes him and has an exchange. Boba, so good to see you alive. I'd heard so many rumors about you, and then Boba shoots him in the chest.
I thought the sand sphincter ate you.
Right. Boba shoots him. Boba goes up to the throne, shoves the corpse out of the way, slowly and menacingly sits on the throne, while Fennec goes and grabs a bottle of spotchka and takes a drink out of that, and then we see quick jump to black, the Book of Boba Fett, coming December 2021.
Which originally is when they announced season 3 of Mandalorian to come out, before they announced this, which leads back into why I think that it may not necessarily be Din Djarin who's leading season 3. It may transition to Boba Fett.
Well, I don't want to crap too much in your Wheaties, but I believe that I read an article that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have said that Book of Boba Fett, it will be next, but Mandalorian season 3 will happen after the Book of Boba Fett airs. So they will film Book of Boba Fett, and then they will film Mando season 3 right after it, and then they will come out in that order as well. Book of Boba Fett comes out next year, and then
so
Mando
Boba Fett is going to be its own show. However, I will say that before they officially announced it and they had that just sitting there for a while, I totally agree with you, Tim, that I could see very much how that could be the case.
Right.
Because for one, it's called the Book of Boba Fett, and all the episodes are referred to as chapters.
Yeah.
So they're keeping with that book theme going on. So I'm like, okay. And you're right. I mean, it's just called The Mandalorian. We assumed Din is that Mandalorian, but I mean, Boba Fett is the Mandalorian. He's the one that helped create the entire race.
Right.
So it didn't seem, and it was announced at the same time that season 3 was going to come out. So I could totally see the logic. And for a while, I'm like, man, is that what it's going to be? Is this going to turn into just a Boba Fett show? And we've essentially closed the book on the story of Din.
That would have been interesting. I mean, but after seeing this, kind of harkening back to this final episode, especially even if you just look at the conflict that's set up between, Mando and Bo-Katan, that story's not closed, even if we just take only that one instance, and it would be a huge disservice to just gloss over that and have, Bo-Katan show up with the Darksaber later and go, oh yeah, I defeated them in combat. Like, oh,
and then also,
really?
The characters are, they've done, I actually want to go back to this real quickly, but this kind of ties in, but the characters, the original characters of the show are so well done.
Oh yeah.
That it would be a disservice to their own fan base. Like Luke coming in and R2-D2 coming in and Bo-Katan and Ahsoka Tano and all that is fantastic and I love it. But Din and Cara Dune and Fennec Shand and Greef Karga and everybody else have become really fantastic characters all on their own. And I want to see their story. And the fact that I still got teared up and goosebumpy seeing Din take his helmet off to show essentially his son, his face for the first time.
Dude,
I Darth Vader taking his mask off to see Luke with his own eyes in Return of the Jedi. It was a beautiful mirror moment, and that moment was as powerful and cool as Luke appearing. And it just goes to the testament of how well crafted these characters are. So it would be an absolute disservice to not continue Din and his friends' adventures, especially when they have some conflict set up already.
Oh, absolutely. And they left it off at a season finale, so they got to do something with it.
Right, and it's something that they don't explore or they don't directly tell you in the show, but part of Mandalorian heritage is actually that the Mandalorian father, plays the key role in the rearing of the children in education and life skills and all that other stuff. So it's actually a pretty bad insult among Mandalorians, if you say someone like your father is worthless, or you insult their father, it's actually a very insulting thing. So we see Din take such a shining to Grogu because of I think not only because of this, but just the way Din is as a character, as a person. But it's ingrained in Mandalorian culture that he is a father to this to Grogu, and he takes that he's really taken to that responsibility.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Taken to the responsibility so much to the point that he's willing to break this dogma that he's been raised under, which he's been. I mean, the walls of that have been tearing down throughout the series, and especially in season 2. But he realizes that this code of taking off my helmet is not worth upholding in comparison to this relationship, this father-son relationship I have now developed. It is worth more than some simple rules that I have to follow.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so there's a lot that's coming, and I think, like I said earlier on in this session, I think they're going to be pulling a Marvel here and tying these different shows and people together in various different ways, and really kind of they live in a connected universe.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
again, some of the shows that they announced or some of the things they announced are going to be their own offshoots and whatnot. Like the Rogue Squadron is going to be a movie; it's going to be on its own. Um, I think Acolyte is supposed to be set during the Old Republic era type thing, from what I heard, but it could just be a a misnomer for like the Luke Skywalker show, and the Grogu's going to be the Acolyte, and yada yada yada. Anyway,
Well, I mean,
and
even
then
the Obi-Wan show, I mean, that's pretty much going to stand separate just for timeline
and
reasons.
that's a limited series. I believe
Yeah.
it's just a mini series, and plus, yeah, it's taking place in between 3 and 4.
Yep, which I'm excited for that one. I particularly loved Ewan McGregor's rendition of Obi-Wan. All the sass ever.
That they have. And I'm very happy Hayden Christensen is coming back as Darth Vader. I am very for allowing him to be to get some better material with which to act with.
I hate
and
sand.
kind of redeem himself.
Sand gets everywhere. I hate it.
Right. So
if he was going for a petulant, whiny teenager, he does it very well. But it's just the writing of it was not the most, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we've got all of these opportunities to interconnect and really rebuild this universe, and honestly, I kind of hope that what they do is they take these series and they basically decanonize the sequel series. They were fun movies, but as a Star Wars fan, I was grossly disappointed with the direction that they went with the story. And the way they characterize people. So I'd love it if they decanonize those movies and basically took the universe into another direction.
See, my
they
thoughts...
go with the Filoni-verse.
Exactly.
See, my thoughts on the sequels. If you took out all the legacy characters, you took out Skywalker, Leia, Han, all them, and just like made it its own like separate Star Wars thing, it would have been fine. But they tried to shoehorn in so much of the old stuff to remind people, hey, you're watching Star Wars, you know that, right? Well, yeah, we saw the title scroll. But they forced that on so much that I think that was its weak point. Had they made this a movie set in like Old Republic era or High Republic era, like they're getting ready to do some books on now, I think it would have stood on its own, no problem. But again, that's my point, is they shoehorned in and shoved down people's throats so much that, hey, this is Star Wars, don't forget it's Star Wars. Did we mention this is Star Wars? That it ruined it. To me.
It was, I think that's a very excellent point. I do think, honestly, yeah, I could have lived with it. It just, if you're trying to go for that, it's a continuation of the saga with which we had gotten before, it feels so disconnected because other than having legacy characters, it just feels like the galaxy reset after episode 6, and that this is essentially a retelling of the original trilogy that just happens to have some of those old characters in it. It really should have just been its own thing.
Was especially like episode 7 was, some people even call that a remake of episode 4. Because it started off, kid with an unknown heritage on a desert planet gets swept up into intergalactic conflict and ends up fighting bad guys with a planet-destroying weapon.
Yeah,
It's
it has many of the same beats and,
Yeah.
and story elements and character things.
and they never gave it a chance to stand on its own as its own new entry into the saga.
I mean, here's one way to think about it. If you're just thinking it as a continuation, the end of Return of the Jedi ends with the New Republic eminently going to be reestablished. Luke is going to reestablish the Jedi Order. The Empire, the Emperor's dead and Darth Vader's dead. The Death Star's destroyed. They're going to be on their heels. Things are going well. But then apparently 30 years pass and nothing has really changed. In 30 years, the Jedi are still basically extinct. The Empire still exists in some form, and all this. So it's kind of like it almost feels like whatever happened in those 30 years, that's what the sequel trilogy should have been about. It's like that's a lot of really important things
In
that
a
are
short
just
time.
relegated to in a short time that are just relegated to like expositional dialogue. It's like no. We should get a movie about that. That seems like an important event.
Now, see,
Well, I mean, they kind of talk about why the First Order exists. It's like a one line. It's like a throwaway line, like, Imperial remnants. We couldn't destroy them, so we signed a peace treaty.
Right.
Or I don't even know. I think it was a ceasefire or an armistice or something.
Right. Now, see, if they wanted to go, if it was me, if I was the one that created the new trilogy, and I wanted to make it connected, I would have gone with, okay, well, where did we end with Return? All right, Empire's defeated. Okay, so we got to come up with a new big bad. Everything's going good here. Luke's starting up a Jedi Temple. Cool. Let's make the new character one of Luke's students.
Right.
Have the Jedi Order, not necessarily as grandiose as it was in the prequels, but Luke's got, we'll say, 20 to 30 students. Not all of them are going to get screen time. Have like one or two have the love interest, have the comedic relief character as per Star Wars formula, and have the new big bad be something that's threatening the Jedi directly, not necessarily the galaxy at large, but maybe some unknown Sith Lord was hiding out in the darkness somewhere. Maybe there's some ancient prophecy, since Star Wars is big on those and forgot about them in the sequels. So have it be something
do old legend stuff and bring and like the Yuzhong Vong kind of thing.
Yes,
have an alien
absolutely.
race that like is either immune to the Force or maybe even feeds upon the Force. So it's like a direct threat to the Force and therefore the Jedi itself.
Yeah. See, and that, like, to me, I think that would have gone over a lot better. Because you're still honoring the legacy of where you came from, but you're making it something new. You're not making, the main character and their, non-shirt wearing cousin boyfriend whatever thing.
Ben Swallow.
Ben Swallow, thank you. You're not making them like, okay, well, this is a main character because he's a descendant of the Skywalker blood. She's a main character because she's, the Emperor's blood. Like, no, you didn't have to have that.
No.
And you could even still have included, Ben in there, have Ben be another student at Luke's Academy and still kind of keep that arc where he falls to the dark side and maybe he teams up with, the new big bad that's threatening the Jedi. Maybe that they've got some power that is even more tempting to the dark side. Who knows? There could have been a million different things that could have done with it. But I mean, we got what we got. Was it terrible? No. Again, I'm a big fan of Drunk Uncle Luke, but I think it could have been better.
It definitely, to me, the problem is that it didn't honor the legacy. Whereas The Mandalorian and all these new shows, to me, thus far, have proved time and time again that they do honor the legacy and the previous history and lore of Star Wars, and
absolutely.
That's why it's so appealing. And that's why Ian's brought this up initially, and I've heard lots of people on Star Wars Reddit forums and things like that talking about how they kind of hope that this show almost decanonizes everything by creating like its own separate timeline, kind of like maybe these shows are going to lead to some kind of divergence where something happened that could have led to the sequels, but these shows are now branching off to this other divergence point.
Right. Well,
and I could see the appeal, but no matter what it is, whether they do an alternate timeline or not, these shows are just pure Star Wars.
Oh yeah. Well, and Ian and I kind of touched on that a while back. We've already seen that, Rebels is canon. We've already seen that some form of time travel, for lack of a better description, exists in the Star Wars universe. I mean, you see Ezra literally pull Ahsoka out of time into a place beyond time. So we know that time travel, in some sense, does kind of exist in Star Wars. So it's entirely
even
possible.
even if they didn't technically canonize it there, it's going to be odd to say this. The new Star Wars holiday special that they did in Lego,
Which was fantastic, by the way.
it is fantastic and totally redeems the Star Wars. It totally redeems Star Wars in a holiday sense.
Oh yeah.
Also does time travel.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Albeit in a weird, funny way. You know, they play it off as funny and fun and whatnot, but it also does time travel
Yep.
and shows that it exists in the universe. So no, it's
Not necessarily canon, but hey, look at half the stuff they've pulled in that's from Legends. It's not canon anymore. They've for the most part made most of that work.
yeah. So I mean, Mando. What I'm gonna say is Mando does a fantastic job of setting the stage for so much more, and it's done so well. It's given us fan service. It's given us emotion. It's given us these stories and these things that we've been wanting for so long, and even stuff that we didn't know we wanted. Right? We didn't necessarily know that we wanted live action Bo-Katan, but hey, it works and it's great.
Oh yeah.
We didn't know that we wanted Baby Yoda, but
We got
sure,
it. Now we can't get enough of it.
right? Exactly. It's like Star Wars crack.
It's like those macaroons that he wanted.
Yeah, exactly. The blue macaroon. What is with them in blue food?
I was gonna say, do you think the blue macaroons
right,
are made from bantha milk?
Yeah, they gotta be, right?
I mean, they're blue.
They're weird green color. That or they're made from like the weird green milk that Grandpa Luke sucks out of the alien titties.
I was gonna say the look that he gives Ray right after he drinks that's it for me right there. The movie could have ended right there, and I'd have been happy.
Yeah, I think the movie could have ended there, and most people would have been happier than the way it did end. Yeah, so Mando does a lot.
Oh yeah,
for Star Wars, and it's done more for Star Wars in 16 episodes than I think we've had in a long time.
yeah.
And it's been fantastic and so much fun, and I'm very much looking forward to what they have to offer here in the near future. And 2020 was a hell of a year, but
Yeah.
20 this is the kind of stuff that makes me look forward to 2021. And I'm gonna broaden the scope and say that everyone was afraid when Disney bought Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, the House of Mouse,
Yeah.
they're taking over more. Everybody had the same thought when Disney bought Marvel, but
Look how good that's turned out.
yeah, look at the sheer amount of money that Disney has made off of Marvel and off that acquisition.
And not only has they made money, but it's also just good. Like,
yeah,
it's not bad.
I mean,
people aren't shelling out all this money just because it's Marvel. It's because it's good Marvel.
Well, I mean, even Marvel's bad stuff still led into good stuff. Like, I mean, I'm gonna drop Thor 2 here. Thor 2 was arguably their weakest point, but the stuff from that still fed into things later. So I mean, it still worked out in the long game for them.
Right.
So even their bad stuff's good.
Right. So I mean, Disney bought Marvel, and then Disney bought Lucasfilm, and everybody's like, oh, I don't know. And admittedly, they had a rocky start. The sequel trilogy was a rocky start. It was a rough way to get Star Wars into the new generation. Maybe for the new Zoomer generation, those folks that haven't seen Star Wars, it would be a good introduction,
right,
to the movie, to the series. But for us older fanboys who really were kind of the target audience, I feel like.
Well, yeah, again, going back to my point about forcing all the legacy stuff down your throat.
Right. But now we're getting to that point where we're getting interconnected universe, and it's good,
right?
Like we're getting good stuff out of Lucasfilm, and then Disney just bought Fox. So what Disney's making all the right moves in the in the industry. They know the properties to get a hold of,
Oh, yeah.
and then they're doing what they need to in order to make those properties successful. So
One thing with the Disney thing and Marvel that I had a thought of is that season 2 of The Mandalorian. I mean, we've been sitting here for like 3.5 hours
Yeah.
waxing poetic about how amazing this season has been, but then and we're talking about how it's honoring the legacy, it's doing all the thing, it's uniting the fan base. We're getting pumped about where the future of Star Wars is going to go and how Disney has sort of redeemed themselves. The thing though is that at the same time, the season 2 of Mando also kind of makes me mad because it makes me think, why weren't the sequels, the actual official movies part of the saga, as good? Like, how come it took them like 5 years to figure out how to make Star Wars great?
Right.
And
That's a
it's just
valid
like,
point.
why? It's just like, man, what's your problem? And I think it goes to why Marvel ended up being successful and why these are successful. It's that Filoni and Favreau obviously have a plan. They
Right.
actually figured out what their overarching point, this interconnected universe, is. They have an idea going through, and for some reason, when they started the sequels, it's just like they were so hot to trot that they got this, $4 billion Star Wars franchise they just bought, that they're just like, screw it, let's not get a plan, let's just get this out as quickly as possible while the pan's still hot. And I think that was the mistake. It's like they just didn't plan, and I don't know why they didn't do that. I mean, they already had this interconnected, really planned universe with Marvel, and that worked out fantastically for them. You would think they would have just done the same thing, but they didn't. They did, but it just took them 5 years and with the TV series.
Right.
I think part of that lends itself to the fact that the sequel trilogy did this thing where they were, going to have 3 different directors and
Yeah.
3 different writers, and everyone was I mean, it kind of follows an overarching story, theme, but it's, they kind of let everybody do their own thing. And again, I would have been interested to see what Colin Trevorrow had to offer for his
Actually,
rendition.
I don't know if you guys saw it, but Colin Trevorrow, at least one of his drafts of his episode 9, which was going to be called The Duel of Fates,
Yep.
was released, and you can read it.
And it's actually pretty good.
It's actually like it. I thought just the description of it was actually better than Rise of Skywalker. Like, if they made that pretty close to what that script was, I would have been very happy with it.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a bit more satisfactory as a conclusion, and I think would have helped redeem the other previous movies.
No, I agree.
So it's kind of a shame. It's kind of a shame that they didn't go with that script, and it's also kind of a shame that they maybe just should have gone with just J.J. Abrams, or at least one person going through all 3 movies.
I mean, at least that way you've got that the same mind behind the lens, as it were, to kind of keep everything cohesive. But yeah, when you're doing so many different directors and all this, that, and the other, things are gonna get muddled, things are gonna get lost, and you're gonna when it comes down to it, it's like, well, I guess I got to do the best I got with what's laid in front of me.
Yeah, and it's not only that they're different, but they didn't have a plan. The original trilogy movies had 3 different directors, and they had different writers on most of the scripts. There were some shared ones because obviously George, had input, and I think Lawrence
Right.
Kasdan was on there. But the thing is that even though they had different directors and writers, they still had someone there who had a plan.
Yeah,
which was George.
They had George sitting there going, okay, this is how this is going to play out. This is how this is going to play out. Here's your end point. Go.
Whereas the sequels, they were just like, we're going to have different directors and writers, like almost as if they were like, well, we're going to copy the formula that worked for the original trilogy. But they left out the important part of that they had someone there to be the main point man.
Right.
Well, I mean, they obviously got a hold of Filoni when they bought Lucasfilm, because he was still working there at the time. But I think he wasn't given the opportunity to do those things, and he was never had experience with feature-length film, let alone television. So, with the exception of Clone Wars, so they gave him Clone Wars, said, finish up Clone Wars, do your last season, and then Jon Favreau came on board with the concept for Mandalorian, and I think that, like we talked about earlier, they're a good foil to each other.
Oh yeah.
they play well off
Right.
of each other. John's got the experience in live action, and Dave's got the experience with characterization and writing and just the universe, and it works well together. And again, it goes back to what Keenan said: have a plan.
Yeah, I think. I mean, ultimately, if they do decide to make episodes 10, 11, and 12 or anything like that, if they do decide to do that, they need to go into it with a plan. But I mean, I think at this point, even with Rey doing whatever she does at the end of episode 9, I think that saga is, for the most part, pretty well wrapped up. I mean, Rey's going to do what Rey's going to do. I mean, you can do a book on it, you can do a one-shot movie on it, but I think for the most part, that saga is done. Now, I mean, I will say, especially with them announcing a lot of the High Republic books and whatnot, I know a lot of people, myself included, are excited to see new, entirely new sagas, unrelated to what we've seen before. And I mean, I personally, I'm pretty excited if that ends up being the case, because it'd be nice to kind of get that, a cleansing of the palate, as it were, where we're still getting Star Wars, but we're trying a different dish on the menu now.
Right.
Yes. I just think the Skywalker saga, I mean, especially since legacy character actors are dead, or they're just done with the series, or they're old, I think we might as well just move on. The story of that family, it had its conclusion, and I think just trying to do anything more is just trying to suck the last drops of money out of it, and I think it would just leave a sour taste. So I agree. Go ahead, move on to other stories. The galaxy's tens of thousands of years old, and a whole galaxy worth. Let's get other stories, and let's focus on a new generation of things.
Absolutely.
And like Old Republic and High Republic would be fantastic. You know, I've heard lots of rumors of people like, oh man, make a movie adaptation of KOTOR and get Keanu Reeves as Darth Revan.
I would be on board with that, because Keanu is a delightful human being.
He pulls off some John Wick moves along with lightsabers.
Oh, that'd be so awesome.
Yeah, I think we could probably go on for another 3 hours with all of our theories on Star Wars and where we want to see the universes go. But you've hung out with us for 3.5 hours at this point.
It is 3 hours, 11 minutes, and 30 seconds at the beep. Beep.
So, I think that was our review of season 2 of The Mandalorian. We're very much looking forward to season 3 and everything that's coming out in the Star Wars universe. And you never know, maybe we will record some reaction videos here in the upcoming year for some of the new series that are coming out. I think we may also, we got some stuff in the hopper that we're thinking about doing to expand our repertoire, as we'd like to say. But we'd like to thank you again for joining us tonight and sticking with us throughout our review and our random non sequiturs. I'd also like to extend a thank you to my brother Keenan for joining us and providing his fair insights and opinions and comedy to our little show here.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks for hopping in, Keenan. Appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. I loved it, guys. I was a huge fan, and being here with you guys talking, nerdy for hours on hours. So thank you very much for having me join in.
Yes. So for non sequitur nerds, I think we're going to sign off for tonight. So I will say, have a good night, stay safe, happy New Year. I'm Ian,
and I'm Tim. Thanks for joining us.
Goodbye.